Welcome to the 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show, presented by Inside the Rink. We are excited to be joining you live today from all over the U.S. and Canada. Now, here's your host, Connor Green.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is going to be the 2022 Trade Deadline special, presented to you by Inside the Rink. I will be joined today by none other than Clifton Ramey of Cue the Dagger podcast and Chicago Blackhawks enthusiast. And we'll have some special guests brought along throughout the day here. It's going to be a long 4 hours, and we are currently sitting about 2 hours until the trade deadline. How are you doing today, Clifton? Are you ready for the long haul?
Yeah, I'm doing good. The Hawks have been pretty active already so far. So far I've been enjoying the day. But yeah, I'm hoping a few more things can come down the pipeline here.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, the Chicago Blackhawks have been fulfilling on what they've been looking to do with a rebuild, and we'll definitely get into that. We've got 4 hours to chew through some of these trades, but to start off today, there's actually been a recent trade coming down the pipeline of the New York Rangers acquiring Justin Braun from the Philadelphia Flyers, so it's no better time than now to bring on Jacob Berkowitz of the New York Rangers podcast and Luca Perito, our Rangers writer. How are you guys today?
Good.
Pretty good. How you guys doing?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Starting off the day with some familiar faces is always a nice thing. So quick reaction from you, Jacob, first. What's your instant take about Justin Braun coming over to the Rangers?
So I think it's just, remaining to be seen what he's here for. If he's just for veteran leadership and depth, it's a good move. But then again, if he's overused, replacing an actual guy that's 10 times better than him, as the Rangers have the reputation of doing, then it might be a bit, it won't be great. But the first reaction is that this is a pretty solid trade for a depth guy who's actually has analytically pretty good defensive numbers. I think if used right, this could be a solid depth trade.
All right. Now, Luca, do you have any quick thoughts on the Braun trade?
Yeah. This Rangers defense is really young. I think there's out of the top 5 right now before this trade, 4 out of the top 5 are under the age of 24 or just at 24. Like, I think Lindgren and Fox just turned 24 this month. Trouba's the elder statesman, and he's like, I think 27 or 28. There's almost no playoff experience on this back end. And he brings 100-plus playoff games to the back end. Now, where he's going to be in the lineup or in that defensive pairings, I really have no idea, because everyone was thinking that they were going to be going after a veteran left-hand defenseman. He's a right-hander. I really don't know if Gallant is going to be as obtuse when it comes to left-hand and right-hand pairings as the previous Rangers coaches have been. David Quinn, he really did not like the mix and match like that. He liked his lefties and righties. But yeah, I don't know. I think it could be a really good move. So he's played the 31 most shorthanded minutes of defenseman this year. So the guy he likes to eat, or he's used a lot in penalty kill minutes, which if you're looking at the Rangers, they want to preserve Adam Fox. The guy plays in every situation. He's Berkowitz has been talking about it a lot, how he's been tired lately, and he had a little bit of a lull there. They need to preserve Adam Fox to have any kind of run. Adam Fox is just as pivotal as Shesterkin when it comes to this team.
Now, before I kick it over to Clifton here, do you think that if Braun will play on his opposite side, that this is kind of a no-brainer move to replace Nemeth on that second pair?
So I think it's actually possibly insurance for Braden Schneider. Maybe they don't trust a young guy like that come playoff time. I would prefer, obviously, him a replacement over Nemeth. I get very skeptical of grading players that have played with Nemeth, as you saw with Nils Lundqvist, who was dropped down. You see his analytic numbers, you see his numbers without Nemeth, and they're just a different player. So, unfortunately, you got to wonder if this is probably like insurance, just in case Schneider doesn't come up to the task. I would like him, instead to replace Nemeth, but I think the more doable situation is because the Rangers aren't not a fan of having right-handed shots on the left side. They like to keep them both a right-handed shot on the right side, left-handed shot on the left side. I think Braun's got to replace Schneider if he doesn't come up to the task.
Yeah, now I can understand, the left and the right options and trying to keep people on their natural side, but from an outside looking in, that just kind of seems like a no-brainer. I know that Rangers Nation isn't necessarily a huge fan of Patrick Nemeth there, but I guess time will tell. We've got a couple days after the deadline here where we'll start to see practice lines, etc., into where he may play. But I'll kick it over to Clifton here and let him ask some Rangers-related questions.
Yeah, so I guess my big question is, what do you guys want from the Rangers? Are you guys looking to kind of make small moves like this, or are you looking to make a big splash? I mean, I know there's not much left in the pond per se. Just kind of curious on what you guys are hoping coming into the deadline.
So I'm looking for possibly a shooter first mentality guy like Phil Kessel. I know Andrew Kopp kind of for right now for me it's not really a big fish anymore, but that's kind of the guy for me I'd want. He's a third line center. Me and Luca were discussing last night. It's not the best player, it's the right player. And with Andrew Kopp, he fits much better on the third line than per se like a guy like Rickard Rakell. I was speaking with people who are around with the Ducks, and they say that Rickard Rakell doesn't fit properly on the third line. He needs top 6 minutes in order to perform. And I believe that means Andrew Kopp would fit perfectly third line center. If you have a line of Hedel, him, and say Toronto, that's a pretty solid third line to have come playoff time. My backup would probably be Phil Kessel because he's just a shooter mentality, and Lord knows we need those on the Rangers.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on a bunch of your comments, but I think that if you look at the Rangers, the last time they went to the Cup in 2014, their third line was Benoit Pouliot, Matt Zuccarello, and Derek Brassard. That was a really solid third line that was at times able to just because the first two lines, obviously, everyone knows this when you go into the playoffs. The first two lines are going to occupy so much of the attention of the other team's better defensemen and their game plan, and the third line really is relied upon to give you those that depth. And right now, the Rangers, up till this point in the season, the third line has been questionable at best. Filipino has not blossomed into what they want yet. And I think that they really have been kind of tinkering with a lot of fourth liners on that line. I mean, Dryden Hunt was on the second line for at least 40% of the season. And it was that the Vetrano trade knocked him down a line, but it's really what really happened is, or what the real problem is Kakko being hurt, because that leaves a huge spot next to Panarin and Sholm open. But if he comes back, now I don't know what the situation is with his injury, because the NHL is their trade or their injuries reports are like a Christopher Nolan script. It's like everything is top secret. So you really don't know what his issue is, but they're saying the end of the month. But if he can come back for playoffs, then I would really just focus on the third line. And I think that one more player, maybe even two more players would be perfect for that third line. At this point, Berkowitz already alluded to it. A lot of the big fish are already gone, so it really is just third line and depth players at this point. And they got. I like the Braun move so far. I mean, time will tell how it's actually going to pan out. But I really, it's going to be 2 or 3 additions on that third line, I think, and maybe just complete all new players. They got one in Vetrano. See what they do now.
Yeah, so I wanted to also mention, it seems like there's a pattern the past couple of weeks with Chris Drury is that he's only looking for the value deals, meaning if someone ever ups their offer for Andrew Kopp or Phil Kessel, I think Drury's out immediately. I don't think he's willing to play that bidding game. I believe he just wants those value deals. You see with Vetrano, you see now with Braun, he's only wanting to get those value deals, and that's really the only things we're going to see. I know it's a bit disappointing for Rangers fans, although it depends what your perspective is what you want for them. But I think that if someone there was a report that there were 2 second round picks for Andrew Kopp on the table. This is not a report from me at all whatsoever. This is just my thinking. I would put on money that it's the Rangers, it's very possible it's someone else. I'm just spewing here. This is not an actual report, just common sense. And with the cap hit, it's $35 million. I mean, the Rangers don't have a problem with it. They're not going to have a problem with that. You also wonder if Drury's going to help with a trade somewhere else and take a bit of cap to, get a pick or so. So, yeah, I think the Rangers here are just going to take one or two more moves, really. Either it's a Phil Kessel, Andrew Kopp. But again, if a team like Colorado ups their offer for Andrew Kopp, I think the Rangers are out of it. I don't think Drury's willing to bid.
Yeah.
I think the Rangers' big move is going to come in the offseason. Because what Drury's doing is he's holding on to Niels Lundqvist for the time being, Zach Jones, all of these guys, and he's kind of, I think Connor can attest to it more, that he's been holding on to these guys. He's not going to trade any of these guys for rentals. So that means he's going to make a bigger move, probably packaging a bunch of them together in the summer. And Strome is still unsigned. That could probably be the move for a UC during the summer. I mean, obviously, there's a lot to go between now and then, hopefully a long playoff run, but that's what I think he's holding them on for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to touch on the Frank Vatrano trade here in a little bit. And we do seem to have somewhat of breaking news, although it's not a trade in Ranger land. But quickly, I do want to bring on the third guest to the Forever panel today for the duration of our deadline coverage. Going to bring on Garth Wickham from the Production Line podcast and a writer for Inside the Rink. How you doing, Garth?
Oh, not too bad. A little bit of issues getting onto here, but I'm excited to get started.
Absolutely. We're going to come back to you in some of that Red Wings insider knowledge there. But quickly, we're starting to see a report coming out from ESPN's Emily Kaplan that Alexander Georgiev will not be moved by the deadline today. Jacob, my question for you is, we've been talking quite a bit recently. I've told you a couple times that it doesn't seem that Drury wants to be able to move bigger pieces of this lineup unless it's for a significant piece who will be around for a while. Georgiev's an RFA at the end of the season. Where do you see this headed after this season?
I think Georgiev's a goner after the season. After this year, listen, the Rangers have $35 million cap this year, but next year it's got to be tight. It's got to be really, really tight. I don't think Georgiev's going to be back here. I think he's traded either draft day or a little bit after that. My thinking here is that Drury obviously did not have offered what he wanted for Georgiev today. Obviously, you've told me, and it's possible that we said it on the pod last night, that Drury wanted possibly a second round pick or a ready prospect. And it just doesn't seem that's realistic right now. Obviously, he played out of his mind last night, but it doesn't look like anyone was going to bid for him at all, especially with the other goalies on the market. And it's honestly to be expected, really.
Luca?
Yeah, it's interesting. I know we jumped on the New York Rangers podcast last night after the Ranger game, and I kind of just asked the question to Shiragi and Jake that does the way that Georgiev just played make it easier or harder for Drury to trade him? In a way, it's an audition for other teams that are looking for a stopgap goalie. Or B, you actually see what you really have been wanting to see from Georgiev all season. And if Shesterkin gets hurt, unfortunately, he would be your option. So does that make it easier or harder for him to trade him? And I think that it kind of, in a way, makes it a little harder for Drury because it's, yeah, the idea is to get rid of him because he is like something accurate. But the main issue is that you're not getting more than a third or a fourth round pick for him. I believe that was what I could be wrong on that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Connor, but I believe that was what the Rangers were, at least the reports were that they were possibly getting. They really wanted a little bit more. And if you're not going to get more, then hold on to him for the rest of the year. He's your insurance, albeit not the best insurance plan. It's probably like my health insurance plan right now. But, I think it's a decent option just to hold on to him for the rest of the year and then get out And I mean, the Rangers have had a pretty good job or have done a pretty good job of drafting and developing goalies. He was an undrafted free agent that they signed. So, I think that they could find someone else to replace him as the backup goalie next year on the cheap. So, I think holding on to him is not a bad idea.
Yeah, and like you were saying, I was hearing that the Rangers were getting offers of like a 3rd-round pick for Georgiev, and Drury really didn't want to let go of him for anything less. He was really looking for a 2nd-round pick and a prospect because let's face it, Georgiev is not, a depth goalie piece. If Shesterkin wasn't playing completely out of his mind, it would probably be a little bit more of an even split in the goaltending department in New York.
And the main issue with Georgiev is that he needs to. It's for a backup goalie. It's not good because he needs to play consistently. He's proven that he's a decent goalie when he plays in not consecutive nights, but consecutive starts, and he gets kind of a rhythm on. But now he's playing once every 3 or 4 games at best. And he has not been able to find any kind of continuity or rhythm. And so, I think that if you're going to trade for him as a backup goalie, he hasn't proven he can be a backup, let alone a starter.
That is very true. Although he does play better when he is the proverbial 1A.
Yeah.
And he's getting the lion's share of the games. It's almost common with goalies that you see them kind of get on those runs when they're getting more of the net. I mean, for example, what happens in Boston this year with the Tuukka Rask, Linus Ullmark, and Jeremy Swayman. Seems like whoever ends up with most of the net seems to actually produce. But to kind of spin off of that, one of the other things that you mentioned a little bit earlier was Frank Vetrano and that acquisition, how that spread out the depth through the Rangers lineup. What are your initial thoughts on that Vetrano trade so far? I think he's only played 1 or 2 games with the Rangers at this point.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, the Rangers have a big problem of that they don't have a lot of shoot-first mentality players. Vetrano certainly helps. The fact that they've got him only for a 4th-round pick was really, really good. You got to wonder if that trade happened after the Hagel deal. They might have been able to get a 3rd. Maybe not because that was a cap dump for Giroux. But Vetrano is definitely refreshing to see him just shoot everything on net. That's why I said before that a guy like Phil Kessel, another shoot-first mentality, would be terrific. If not, like a guy like Andrew Kopp. He's played really good. He got the empty netter last night. He's been really on it. And, he obviously said it was his dream to be here as a New York Ranger. And he's a fast skater, which we really need because we don't have a lot of fast skaters. And we play dump and chase. So you need a good amount of fast space skaters. And I think it's a really good trade for the Rangers as a depth addition. I think obviously they still need one more.
Piggyback on a few of the comments you made to actually kind of connect that with what Cliff had asked us before about what we really wanted. Speed is something that I forgot to really talk about. This Rangers line they don't have an excess of speed. And I would, ideally, if there's a player out there, I would love to add some more of that. But we get on Vetrano. He's fitted nicely on that second line next to Panarin and Strome. Even in the first, he's only played 3 games with them. Stepped right into an Islander game that was it was a very, very, there's 3 games his first 3 games the Rangers have been really, really tight checking, hard games. But he's actually played really well in that second line. He's set up Panarin like grade A scoring chances 2 or 3 times in those 3 games. And Panarin's, he's missed on a few of those. Not going to miss on a lot of them, but he missed on all of them so far. I think he fits in well with them so far. But ideally, he's not a second-line winger. You ideally want Capo to get back from his injury. You want him to slide in there and hopefully kind of rekindle some of the magic that they had in, I believe it was November, Kako was put on that line. He had about 7 or 10 game scoring streak going. And then Gallant moved into the first line with Mika and Kreider, and everyone had a heart attack. And then he got hurt. And now it's just kind of the waiting game with him. But I think for Toronto, ideally, we've talked about it before, slots into that third line really well. So far, he's really, really just fit in nicely with the team. But yeah, I like the move so far. And also, what was it, a 4th round pick?
Oh, the Toronto, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's no risk.
Fair enough. Now I'll turn it over to Clifton or Garth. You guys have any Rangers related questions for the guests here?
I'll go first. I was more so wondering for the sense of like you're still missing that true, I think, top 6 winger along with it. I don't know if you guys talked about before with like a Phil Kessel option. I know he's not like at this point he's a middle 6, probably more third line, but then you have him and Vetrano possibly. Like if one doesn't fit, would you see a fit there with Kessel?
Yeah, I think Kessel fits more into the second line mold. And this is just me. Look, I haven't watched a lot of Coyotes games this year. I'll full disclosure. But I think historically he fits in next to Panarin and Strome a little better, just from his skill standpoint. And I'd also just love to add someone who actually has 2 long playoff runs. This team is young, and even the older players don't have a lot of playoff experience. And I know that, that's such a cliche. You want to add experience and playoff experience, all that, but it's a cliche for a reason. The playoffs are a gauntlet, and you need people to kind of usher in the new wave, the younger players, to kind of get them some experience and just kind of like teach them the way. And especially if you got a 2-time cup winner. But I think he fits in great in that second line. Vetrano, I think, fits in more to a third line. Kessel, I don't know, fits into a third line because it's hard to see what that third line is before the end of, what is it? It's 122 right now. It's hard to see what that third line really is ultimately going to be, even if Kessel's there. I don't know who center's going to be. So it's hard to see, but I would love for them to get Kessel, and I think Jake would agree.
So yeah, going back to that Georgiev thing quickly, Emily Kaplan also said that the Rangers basically told Georgiev that they would try to find him a new home in the summer. So that kind of confirms my suspicions earlier. In regards to Kessel, I fully agree to some extent. He did play for the third line for the Pittsburgh Penguins when they went to back-to-back Stanley Cups. He played really well. However, you don't exactly have Nick Bonino and Carl Hagelin on your third line also. So that is a problem. If you have a guy like, I don't know, I was very interested in a guy like Dr. Lehtinen, but it does not seem like that's going to happen since Drury, I don't know. It seems that, they probably want a good amount for him, which Drury's not going to do now. I'm sorry, I meant Gordon. Gordon wants, a good amount. Regards to that third line as a whole, that's why I say Andrew Kopp, because, he's that perfect mold. He's that perfect fit for their third line center. Now, regarding Ryan Strome, he's obviously a UFA at the end of the year. There have not been any reports as of now that trade contract talks are, progressing. You got to wonder, since, again, a lot of people have said that Strome hopefully will take a discount. I have said if he would have definitely taken it by now. So you got to think that, he's a goner at the end of this year, unless Strome comes after the playoffs and they have a good run. And he's like, hey, I want to do this again. I don't see it happening. So like you said, Luca, it seems to be that there would be a bigger trade during the summer. Now, they don't have a lot of cap next year, so they're going to have to do some maneuvering here. But it seems to be that there are centers on the market in the offseason. And, I think that's when Drury will go all in and take a swing at things. But again, the market was very weird this year. A lot of teams overpaying. I mean, you look at the Hagel trade, a lot of teams overpaying. So I think this is Drury saying, okay, we'll do the right deals now, and then we'll go all in the summer.
All right. I was, kind of building off that second line center decision. I know like there's other guys. Are you guys looking for like with Hedel? Would you guys move a Hedel for a more? I know Ryan Strome's kind of done well at second line center, but maybe a more established option than Philip Hedel.
So Hedel, first. Yeah. So Hedel has not been as expected. We've kind of envisioned him to be a third line center, maybe borderline second. That has not happened. His best hockey has been on the wing. That's why whenever we kind of theorize third lines right now, we always put him on the wing because that's where he's best at. His speed on the sides by the boards, with his big body. It really fits well there. But, he's not a good puck possessor. So that's kind of center 101. That's out the door. I personally think the right trade comes along, he'll desperately be traded. Connor told me, obviously, 2 months ago, that Filipino for DeBrusque was possibly on the table. And I don't know who said no, who said yes. Not said yes, but who said no. But that obviously didn't happen. And yeah, we'll see what's going on. But I think people would be shocked to see, I don't think Filipino has that big of a value because, he's been in the league, 4 or 5 years. He still hasn't, taken the next step. So I think that's right off the bat a concern for other teams.
Yeah, I know, kind of go off of that. I know, the Rangers, I've, looked at, obviously, there's JFresh and stuff like that, all the analytics for the Rangers, and I know they've struggled mightily 5-on-5, getting bailed out by Igor Shesterkin, for a lack of a better term. But so that's why I was kind of thinking about maybe another middle six forward to get, help push the pace. But I do like the pickup of Justin Braun. That is a solid pickup, veteran guy, like you guys were saying earlier.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. And I mean, I think Heedle's had every opportunity to take the next step, and this is his second head coach now, second head coach now. And I just don't want to. This is the problem. I don't necessarily want to give up on someone who's 22 years old, and I don't think they want to either. But if you trade him now, you're trading when the stock is down on him, and you're probably not going to get much back for him. I don't think, at least. He'd probably be a throw-in in a deal. I don't know if I don't think him for DeBrusque is going to happen 1-for-1. I think the Rangers would probably have to throw more into that. But yeah, I mean, the Rangers definitely need to upgrade center, and I don't see Heedle as of yet, because every time he takes a step forward or 2 steps forward, he'll come back and take 2 or 3 steps back right away the next 2 games. So he's a very inconsistent player like that. I don't know if you guys heard Gallant recently said he wants him to play more like Mika Zibanejad. It's like, yeah, we want everyone to play like Mika Zibanejad a little bit more sometimes, So it's just like we all got a good laugh about that. But I mean, I do understand what he's saying. He wants him to play more of a complete 200-foot game, and that's been his issue right now. He hasn't put it all together. He's extremely talented, just a really good skater, really fast, but the puck skills just really haven't translated. He constantly just turns the puck over and just bonehead decisions. But yeah, I don't know.
Now, quickly, because we're starting to get heavy on time here early in the show, what is, in your opinion, the ceiling for how far the Rangers can go this season? Is it let's give the team some experience with the younger players in the playoffs, or would you prefer to see Drury make a pretty, extensive run at it and try to go as far as possible?
I'd like to see them get a guy like Andrew Kopp, even if it's a little bit more than they previously offered, just because you see just one little trade of a Toronto, sees what it does to a team like that. Again, a lot of their top players are exhausted. They're, carrying this team, especially Shesterkin, because they have no depth. Getting a guy like Andrew Kopp on the third would do wonders to this team. It would take a lot of pressure off a lot of players. And I think you would see even a better team. The fact, I know Carolina kind of doesn't count because that was just the Georgiev show, but just to show that, they were able to beat Tampa and Carolina back-to-back games, it just shows you that they can't beat these teams in playoffs, but, this play team is not to be trifled with come playoff time.
And Luca?
I think you give your team the best chance to win. I think that this team is going to be a hard out. If they make no moves for the rest of the day, I think that this team will be a hard out for any team when it comes playoff time. Can they actually go all the way and win a cup based off of the way they've played already this season? I don't think so. I think this team the only way that they could do that is if 2 things happen. Alexis Lafreniere and Capo Caco miraculously take the next step. Those 2 players need to take the next step because those are the trades those two players would be trades right now that they're making to increase the production. I don't necessarily, obviously I would love to see that happen. I wouldn't bet on it. But anything could happen. I don't see any more big names out there really. If Hurdle was still out there, then it'd be a little bit different of a conversation. I would love for them to get Kopp. I think strengthening the third line right now give this team the best chance to go a little further. But yeah, I think I don't know. I really don't know what the ceiling is. I just know the floor is they're making the playoffs, and that's 5 months ago I wouldn't necessarily have guaranteed that.
Fair enough. Well, I do definitely want to thank you guys for coming on and joining us, especially since there was some Rangers news right as we broke into things here. And I don't know, maybe if we get something impressive that comes down the way in the Rangers trades, we bring one of you guys back on. But do you guys want to give yourselves a shameless free ad before you go?
So you could obviously follow us since we're part of your podcast network at NY Pangers Pod. We're actually doing a Rangers jersey giveaway, either Liberty or home jersey. All you have to do is follow us and retweet the post. It'll be pinned on the top of our account. And we record every single Monday. We release every single Monday's podcast, and we have very exciting guests. And
I'm Luca Perito. You can find me on Twitter at LBigCalzoneLP. I'm the Rangers writer for Inside the Rink. So follow me on there and you can get up to date on all your Ranger news.
Alrighty. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on. We're going to take a quick break here and we'll be back to start breaking down some of the trades that have already happened this weekend.
Take care.
Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. We are excited to announce as part of our show, the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. Our live coverage will be right back. Our live coverage will be right back. A quick word from our show sponsor and friends of Inside the Rink, BetUS. BetUS has your NHL, NBA, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year of live betting. Sign up for BETUS.com with promo code RINK for a 125% sign-up bonus. Again, use promo code RINK for your 125% sign-up bonus. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. Welcome to the 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show, presented by Inside the Rink. We are excited to be joining you live today from all over the U.S. and Canada. Now, here's your host, Connor Green.
All right, and we are back. Just the three of us in for the long haul here. We're just about 90 minutes away from the trade deadline. So how are you guys feeling so far? We're getting close. We've seen a lot of trades. What's on your guys' mind as we come down to the deadline here?
Do you want me to go first?
Absolutely.
Yeah, all you.
All right. Today itself has been a little bit underwhelming. I mean, obviously with the Marc-Andre Fleury trade, that was the big one. But I mean, a lot of the action's kind of just like slowly been spread out past couple days. Obviously, Hampus Lindholm is a big one here in New England. Brandon Hagel is another huge one. But yeah, overall today, a little bit underwhelming, but I think there's still a couple big names that can drop, like Andrew Kopp and obviously a couple Red Wing names that we can get into later. But yeah, I think I'm still have high hopes for some last minute deals.
Yeah, absolutely. And Clifton, what's your feeling so far
Really, I'm just kind of waiting for some news, hoping some more guys get shipped out, get a little more draft capital headed to Chicago, but so far, not seeing too much.
All right. Well, let's get into what's happened already. Kind of want to go in, a little bit of a chronological order here. So I'm going to start off with the Josh Manson trade. Josh Manson got traded from the Anaheim Ducks to the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for right shot defenseman Drew Hellison and a 2023 second round pick. And Anaheim retained 50% of his salary for the rest of the season. Garth, what does this do for the Colorado Avalanche, who are trying to make a good push to the Stanley Cup while they've still got a cheap Nathan McKinnon contract?
Well, that's the biggest thing, right? Cap flexibility, which retaining 50% on Manson does everything. Their back end, the last couple playoffs, have really missed that bite on the back end. Obviously, they have like Kermis McDermott, but he's not much more than a 6'7" guy. But Josh Manson can legitimately play, and can play top 4 minutes. I think pairing him alongside a guy like Sam Girard does a lot of good. I mean, obviously, you have 2 Norris contenders in Devin Tays and Cale Makar. So I think that Manson fits in real nice in the 4 spot on the right side. I don't know if you want me to talk Anaheim side as well, but Drew Hellison, he's a good prospect. I've seen him. I watched him twice this year. Really good with the puck. I think he's an underrated skater as well. I know some reports say he's not a great skater, but I've liked his skating. And obviously, Pat Verbeek just made the decision that if they're not going to re-sign, then he's going to get something for him. And obviously, you can argue about the return maybe a little bit, but he's getting something for those players, which is very important. And can you continue stocking picks, which can be ultimately used? I mean, they have a lot of young guys right now. Those can be used for players in the future, like 23, 24-year-olds. They can help build around the core.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it really comes down to the physicality, like you said, because they have been getting pushed around in the playoffs, which you don't want to see with that kind of talent that they have. But Clifton, the Chicago Blackhawks are in the same division there, so you see Colorado all the time. How do you think this impacts their lineup and a push for the Stanley Cup?
Well, obviously Colorado's a wagon to begin with. They definitely needed to add some depth as far as some grit and big bodies and stuff like that playoff style of hockey. I think they're missing that. I think it's a good add. I don't think they gave up too much. They saved some cap. They still have some flexibility to make some moves. I think Colorado's probably my favorite coming out of the West, and I don't necessarily think they're quite done yet. I think they could add another little piece here or there, and Colorado's Joe Sakic's done a great job over there. He's keep making good moves with little risk, and it seems to pay off for them. Hopefully, well, not really hopefully, but for their sake, hopefully they go on a deep run, but I don't want to see him do anything like that personally, but,
Taking the fandom out of it, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer that they need to stock up, get bulky. We're still expecting them in the next 90 minutes or so to make kind of a bigger splash, but they were the ones that got it started off, earlier this week. And they followed it up with a second deal. This is more of a hockey trade, a 1-for-1, what seemed like a just cap logistics when they were hoping to still be in the Claude Giroux sweepstakes. But you saw a 1-for-1, no salary retention swap of Nico Sturm and Tyson Jost with the Minnesota Wild. This one's probably a quick one, but do you guys have any comments on that trade?
I think it's a really good deal for both sides in the sense that Tyson Jost, I think, is the better player of the two, like for upside, but he makes more money, and Colorado sheds, I think it was 1.3 roughly. I think it was 1.275, but round up. But Tyson Jost was a really good player in the BC. Coming out of his draft, was picked 10th overall. And I feel with how good Colorado got so fast, he never really got that true opportunity to be a top 6 member. I'm not saying he's going to get that in Minnesota, but maybe a couple more minutes and he can be closer to a third-line player than he has been.
Fair enough. Do you have any comments on that, minor hockey trade there, Clifton?
I guess my only thing is why do it in division? Do you really want to see Tyson Jost again next year. He's under contract again, and then he's still an RFA. If the potential, I know he hasn't really panned out by any means, but if he does pan out, do you really want that to be in your same division? Would be my only real kind of harp on the trade. Otherwise, it opened up cap for Colorado. Minnesota got a nice player that can play in their bottom six and maybe get to that top six role. I think it's kind of a win-win. Just a little worried that you sent him in your same division.
Fair enough. That's always kind of the risk that you run there when you trade in the division. You're going to see the player quite a bit, but when you have a roster like Colorado, sometimes that doesn't really matter. Of course, there's going to be some serious cap issues coming in Minnesota with those buyouts. That'll be haunting their cap space. They're going to be dinged with a 12, a 14, and a $14 million cap hit over the next 3 years in dead space. So that's certainly going to put a damper on all the fun in Minnesota, but that leads us right into one of the bigger trades that we've seen thus far, and arguably kind of an overpayment. We saw a Ben Sherratt being traded from Montreal to Florida at a 50% retained salary for a conditional 2023 first-round pick, a conditional 2022 fourth-round pick, and center prospect Ty Simulanik. Now, this was the first big piece to really move on the trade deadline for a first pick, obviously. It is a 2023 first-round pick, and it is top 10 protected. But what do you think about Florida pushing the chips in the middle here with a Ben Sherratt deal earlier this week?
I think you got to like it. Florida is a team that's kind of been little brother to Tampa Bay for a long time, and it's about time they start really pushing in the chips. In the sense for that first round pick, I don't think it's going to be that high. I think it's going to be around the 30 range. So how much are you actually losing there? The Ty Smilanic kid, I know Kent Hughes watched him play a bunch because I think he played in the same league as his son, I'm pretty sure. 2020, I know he has some skills. Skating is a concern. But when you look at it that way, obviously there's some concerns about Ben Sherratt with his mobility and puck moving. But he is a body mover, which is something Florida's back end doesn't really have outside of Radko Gudas. Ben Sherratt was also playing top pair minutes in Montreal. And you can argue whether or not he should have been there or not, but in Florida, he's going to be a 4-5 guy, which I think fits his skill set a lot more. He's down to 18 minutes versus like 23. So I think there could be a lot better of a fit where he looks better in that sense. Yeah, I definitely think it was an overpayment, but also I get it for the type of player that you're getting. And I think he's better than he is, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does to some degree, but the comment about him kind of sliding down in the lineup a little bit, that might go out the window with an Aaron Ekblad being down with an injury and, potentially being out the regular season. Where do you really see that panning out? Is it still going to work if he has to play, potentially top pair minutes?
Yeah, no, that's going to be a good one. I mean, Mackenzie Weegar, obviously very good defenseman. I think it's a little bit different than what Sherratt was playing with in Montreal this year. I think Weegar is honestly probably top 20 defenseman in the NHL right now. Yeah, Ekblad's a huge loss. But I don't know how they divvy that up. Maybe they go Forsling up there, and then you have Sherratt with maybe Montour or something like that. There's plenty of options. But, I mean, I guess if you're giving up that many assets, you probably want to see him in a more of a top role. Only time will tell, but I do think still with the amount of talent he has playing around him, I think he'll be okay. I think it's going to be, when you look back on it, it's not going to be this huge overpayment. And also, if they do end up going to, let's say, the Stanley Cup final, I don't think anyone's complaining about it.
True. Very true. It is kind of scary, though, as a Florida Panthers fan, when you see that you don't have a first-round pick for the next, 3 seasons. That's kind of a tough look, but Tampa Bay, and we'll get to that still, but Tampa Bay and Florida are really just throwing picks across the National Hockey League like they don't matter to anything anymore.
Fun coupons.
Clifton, do you have any comments on Ben Sherratt going to Florida?
No, really. Florida's definitely in a win now. They've gone for it. You said their draft picks and their future are gone, so they're definitely kind of in a scenario to keep up with the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're definitely a team that can win now. They've been through as much adversity as a team can do with early on with Joel Quenneville and everything that happened to him, transition to a new coach. They had zero issues with that. They've been a wagon all season. They've been a cup favorite, and I think they're really pushing their chips in. Is it a little bit of an overpayment? Probably. But really, I think when you're a team like this, you kind of have to go for it. These rosters and depth like this are very rare, especially in the cap era. And when you have an opportunity to push your chips in, you should.
Fair enough. Now we're going to go probably two more trades here. Then we're going to start getting into some of the ones that are breaking as we're speaking here. One of the next ones that I wanted to bring up is Calle Yarncroke gets traded with 50% salary retained from Seattle to Calgary in exchange for a 2022 second round pick, a 23 third round pick, and a 24 seventh round pick. For a pending UFA, that is quite a bit of picks. What are your thoughts there?
Personally, I love Calle Yarncroke, and as a Red Wing fan, trading him for the corpse of David Legwand still hurts me to this day. But no, Calle Yarncroke is kind of like your classic utility knife kind of player. Can play up and down the lineup, very responsible in his own end. And I think he fits in so well in that Calgary lineup. I mean, I think it was him and Elias Lindholm are cousins, and then him and Markstrom grew up in the same town in Sweden. So you have obviously that built-in chemistry. And I forgot who said it, but there's an old saying, or not an old saying, but like recently it's kind of come up where it's everyone's like, you can't have enough Swedes in the locker room, as they're just easygoing guys. So there's something to that as well. But no, I think it was a lot to give up. I do like the return for Seattle, but Calgary's, again, going all in, and I do like the player that they're getting in Calle Yarncroke.
Fair enough. Clifton, you have anything to chime in before we get into the big whopper for you?
Yeah, as far as the Yarncroke trade, just kind of was interesting from my standpoint because it kind of set a market for that type of player, and I think the Hawks have a similar player in Kubalik as value-wise, so that's a lot to get. I don't think he'll draw that much, but it was definitely interesting how much he was really able to get for a Yarncroke. I know they retained 50%, and cap is the most valuable thing on the planet right now, but the second, a third, and a seventh is a lot for a player that's going to be in your bottom six in the pending UFA. So,
fair enough. Now, let's get into the big one. This kind of changed the market for this deadline. And of course, it is the Chicago Blackhawks. Who else this year? And they are sending left wing Brandon Hagel and 2 fourth-round picks in 22 and 24 to the Tampa Bay Lightning for Taylor Radish, Boris Kachuk, a 23 first-round pick, and a 24 first-round pick. Now, Clifton, I'm going to start off with you here, but my question to you is, Hagel was a young player. He had team control at a very friendly contract, and they are looking to rebuild. What specifically finally brought this trade to a point where they couldn't say no anymore?
Well, I definitely think it started with Kyle Davidson being named GM and him saying we're rebuilding this team. And it was kind of known that anybody's available. And he said if you rock their socks off, he'll make the trade. And that's exactly what the Lightning did. They gave up 2 first-round picks in 2023 and 2024. They're both top 10 protected. It's irrelevant. Tampa's going to be a good team. Those picks aren't going to be top 10. They're not even going to be lottery picks, so that doesn't really matter. And you got 2 young players, both under contract for 2 more years following this, in Radish and Kachuk. I think Kachuk is a good bottom 6 forward. I don't think he's going to be anything more than that. Good depth guy, but Radish has a little upside. He connects to Alex DeBrincat and Dylan Strome. They played on that line together in Erie. They put up over 100 points together. He's got some upside. But yeah, I think really what it was is Tampa just came with an offer that Kyle Davidson just couldn't say no. Like, you're a rebuilding team and you're getting offered 2 first-round picks and 2 younger players that for Brandon Hagel that on a Stanley Cup contending team is a super high-end third-line player, in my opinion. Brings energy. He brings everything you want for a cup run. He's that kind of guy you want on your team. His value is definitely more to a team like the Lightning than a team like the Chicago Blackhawks, who, yeah, the $1.5 million is a great cap hit, but cap's not relevant to the Blackhawks at this scenario, and it's relevant to Tampa. So I think it's kind of one of those ones where Tampa might win this year and next year, but Chicago probably ends up, quote unquote, winning the trade in the long run.
Yeah, and Radish has played pretty well so far, it seems, right?
Yeah, he was able to put in a goal and an assist last night. They've played 2 games. They've literally thrown him everywhere in the lineup. He's played with DeBrincat and Strome. He's played with Patrick Kane. He's played on the power play unit. That's where he got his goal. He's looked pretty good. Skating's not the most strong suit by any means, but he's shown a little bit. I don't necessarily think we have a second-line center like Derek King said. I don't think he's close to being a second-line center like Derek King said. I think he's probably a third-line forward that maybe you could throw there if his offensive upside starts to pan out a little bit. But 2 nice young players, but it's really the first-round picks that matter.
Now, Garth, you're our Red Wings writer and podcaster here. The Red Wings and Stevie Y have a whole lot of players that he's looking to move. Do you think he comes anywhere close to a haul like this for any players on the Red Wings?
I think the easiest one is just the older version of Brandon Hagel, which is Tyler Bertuzzi. And you look at that, it's sort of similar in the sense that he has another year on his contract, obviously a little bit more money, which is a little bit tougher to do. But you have teams like LA, Colorado, I think Carolina could make it work as well. That could fit under the cap, but I think Bertuzzi, you look at a deal like Anthony Mantha that came in towards the end of the deadline day last year, which was for Jacob Verana, a young top 6 player who hadn't really gotten a chance. A first-round pick and a second-round pick, and also eating Richard Panik's contract. Obviously, the vaccination issue is a factor, but if you're looking at it from the Metro division, odds are you're not going to play a Canadian team for a little bit unless Boston passes Toronto, which is possible. You look at Colorado and the Central. I can't think of anyone they would play right away there either. The Pacific Division would be the tricky one with Edmonton and Calgary for sure. But I mean, I know it was recently with the border crossing. I don't know what the impact's going to be moving forward. But obviously it is a concern, and I think it does lower the value maybe a little bit. But the season he's having, he's a point-per-game player at 27, locked into good term, and for another year. So you get 2 shots in the playoffs. No pun intended, but you get 2 runs in the playoffs with them. So I think there is a lot of value in Tyler Bertuzzi, because I do think he's a better player than Anthony Mantha, personally. Way more consistent. Mantha has a higher end of skill, but Bertuzzi's the consistent player.
Now, do you think there's any weight in it that, obviously his last name carries something on the Red Wings in Detroit when talking about moving him?
I don't think so. Todd was really in Detroit towards the end of his career, and he wasn't he was fine. He was a second line player playing with Zetterberg, and he was largely getting carried. He's definitely was a fan favorite, but I don't think it's a huge weight in Detroit that Tyler needs to be there. Obviously the fans love him, but I don't think anything with Todd has to do with why fans are nostalgic about Tyler Bertuzzi, I would say.
Fair enough. Now, Clifton, I know you had a question that you wanted to ask about Bertuzzi specifically.
Oh, yeah, I was just curious, the whole vax and all that, does that lower the value? Does it give you issues moving him? But I was just curious what your thoughts on that from a Red Wings standpoint.
Yeah, I kind of laid out a little bit ago. I think it does give you some issues. Like, I know Toronto was rumored this summer to be interested. So, that'd be pretty hard for them to sell to Brendan Shanahan and management that they're going to go for him. Because obviously with games, I don't know which ones he'd play in. In that sense, you're losing half your games there. But I think, again, if you're targeting a Metro Division team, or, depending on how the chips fall in the Pacific, the Edmonton Oilers have been inconsistent this year. I know they've been pretty good of late, but there's still a chance, they get knocked out with Vegas behind. I think Vegas still makes a good run. I don't know if they're going to make it, but that's definitely something to consider. But again, I think he's a more consistent player than Anthony Mantha was. And also with the Brandon Hagel deal, that's a huge comparable, I think, in my mind. So something like that. I know he's young. The only difference is being younger and having 3 years technically of term for Hagel.
Fair enough. Now, I kind of want to transition here a little bit because we've had some comments that have come through on our social media accounts. And one of them is referencing a Zach Senyshyn from Boston. He is being traded to the Ottawa Senators for a defenseman, Josh Brown. Looks like he's a 6'5", 217-pound defenseman on the back end. Boston's been looking to bulk up there and to really get some grit and some nastiness. And of course, you have the famous comments of Bruce Cassidy saying he wants his team to play more like pricks. And you've seen the additions of a Hampus Lindholm, who we'll get to a little later in the show, and now a Josh Brown. So just wanted to bring that up real quick while we were there. And it now looks like, coming across the wire here, per Kevin Weeks, that Garth is back on the hot seat. Nick Leddy looks like he is heading to St. Louis.
I know. I'm trying to get the details quick. I'm here. Okay. Oh, never mind. That's a different Kevin Weeks tweet. I do love his videos right now. I do want to talk about that. Maybe at a different point, but
yeah, we can talk about it right now while we're pulling together the return.
I do love like the memes coming in with like in the there's someone edited like him in the Shadow Realm, the scene from The Shining. It's pretty great. Kevin Weeks is killing it, but yeah, Nick Leddy, he's been a guy that Detroit was expecting more out of when we acquired him for a second-round pick right before the expansion draft. With a young D-core coming up with the likes of Moritz Seider, Gus Lindstrom, Phil Peronik, still a young guy. Nick Leddy was supposed to come in and be a good veteran presence while also logging top 4 minutes and being productive like a power play 1 option. He came in and was power play 1 option, but then Seider overthrew him, and that's where I kind of think his season kind of went south. I think he does lead the league in plus minus in the worst way. I think he's a -33, which I know that's not a great defensive stat, but I mean, if you watch him some nights, he's throwing not great passes out the middle. He's panicking, which is just something he's never really struggled with. And I think different defensive system was kind of a shock to him. Obviously, the Islanders a lot different defensive system than Detroit. But no, more recently, I think Nick Leddy's been paired back with Moritz Seider, who's kind of like a veteran at this point, it seems like. And he's looked a lot more comfortable. I think he had his best game against Minnesota a few weeks ago, where he put up 3 assists and looked really good. He played 25 minutes, and he has shown flashes of his capability. But I'm really curious. I know Frank Cervelli reported that Nick Leddy is an easy second-round pick return. So I'm curious if they're going to go even on the return from what they gave up for Nick Leddy. So I'm wishful thinking. I hope that's what we get.
Fair enough. Just kind of some salary cap laundering there by holding on to him for a while and eating up that cap space. But we're getting a little heavy on time here, and probably going to take a quick break for some ads. But before we do, and you get into the ads there, today is the official launch of the Inside the Rink mobile application. You can get it on any Android or iPhone. We will have the QR codes that pop up during our advertisements and commercials there. So please get on there, check it out. You'll be able to set up some push notifications there shortly. So every time an article with your favorite team comes out, you'll be able to know. And again, thank you for following along on the stream with us. We will be back after a short break.
Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. We are excited to announce, as part of our show, the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. live coverage will be right back. Our live coverage will be right back. A quick word from our show sponsor and friends of Inside the Rink, BetUS. BetUS has your NHL, NBA, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year of live betting. Sign up for betus.com with promo code RINK for a 125% sign-up bonus. Again, use promo code RINK for your 125% sign-up bonus. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS.com. Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. We are excited to announce as part of our show the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. Our live coverage will be right back. Our live coverage will be right back. A quick word from our show sponsor and friends of Inside the Rink, BetUS. BetUS has your NHL, NBA, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year of live betting. Sign up for betus.com with promo code RINK for a 125% sign-up bonus. Again, use promo code RINK for your 125% sign-up bonus. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS.com. Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. We are excited to announce as part of our show the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. Our live coverage will be right back. Our live coverage will be right back. A quick word from our show sponsor and friends of Inside the Rink, BetUS. BetUS has your NHL, NBA, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year of live betting. Sign up for betus.com with promo code RINK for a 125% sign-up bonus. Again, use promo code RINK for your 125% sign-up bonus. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS.com. Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. We are excited to announce as part of our show the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. Our live coverage will be right back. Welcome to the 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show, presented by Inside the Rink. We are excited to be joining you live today from all over the U.S. and Canada. Now, here's your host, Connor Green.
All right, and welcome back. It's the three of us yet again, and we will shortly bring on a special guest. But it looks like we have the trade details coming out for Nick Leddy. And it looks like they are getting back Oscar Sundqvist as part of the return, as well as another pick in prospect. Is that looking like what you were expecting there, Garth?
It's definitely interesting in the sense of the Oscar Sundqvist and Jake Wallman getting added in. I think that's just for cap purposes. I don't know what Oscar Sundqvist's contract looks like. I'm pretty sure he has term longer than just this year. So that is a bit interesting. Second round pick though is good. So I'm happy with that. Luke Witkowski is just an AHL depth. He's I think 30 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, he's my podcast co-host is not happy because he's a Luke Witkowski stan. So good Michigan boy is what he is. So yeah, no, I'm about what I expected. I'm whelmed. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm not underwhelmed. I'm whelmed.
Fair enough. Now, we're going to have another special guest on the show here who's our Edmonton Oilers guru and writer for Inside the Rink, a Mr. Lane Golden. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going, fellas? What's up?
It's another day in the neighborhood. Of course, another exciting NHL trade deadline, and looks like the Edmonton Oilers aren't up to a whole lot of business right now, and everybody was expecting them to be somewhat of a player or a broker, especially for a goaltender. How are things looking in Edmonton right now, just short of the deadline here?
Yeah, I think it's a quiet day in Edmonton. I don't believe there's going to be any action with the goaltending. I think there was a time early in the season when it looked like it was absolutely necessary for them to acquire a goaltender before the deadline. But at this point, the market just doesn't seem to be there. Koskinen, in his last 14 starts, is 11-1-2 with a .920 save percentage. I think that his play has picked up enough that they're confident enough going into the postseason with him as the number one guy, with Smith being there as well. So I don't expect anything on the goaltending front. And then obviously we had the Kulak deal earlier today. That was kind of what I was expecting. Everybody knew they were going to go after a depth defenseman. They deal William Lagesson and a second round pick in that deal. You could say it's a bit of an overpayment, but Lagesson was a restricted free agent at the end of the season, doesn't have a lot of trade value, and I think Kulak brings a lot to the table for the Oilers. They are one of the worst teams in the league when it comes to defending the rush. He's got a lot of good analytics, it looks like, from denying those zone entries, so I think he's going to help them out a lot. He played with Jeff Petrie for a couple of seasons. He has experience playing with offensive defensemen. They have Evan Bouchard and Tyson Barrie, who are both offensive guys that struggle in the defensive zone. So I think Kulak brings kind of that defensive side of things from the left side that'll help out a lot of their defensemen on the right.
Now, without addressing the goaltending, how far do you think that this year's Edmonton Oilers team can really make it into the playoffs?
I think they got some potential, to be honest. I think things really turned around when Dave Tippett was fired, and they brought in Jay Woodcroft. Woodcroft is an excellent coach. He's completely transformed the way they plug up the neutral zone. They were pretty much just allowing the other team to slip right through under Dave Tippett. They weren't detail oriented enough. Their defensive structure was all over the place. I like Woodcroft a lot, but I think that they need to figure out their special teams if they're going to make it past the second round. I think as of right now, it's looking pretty good that they play the Kings in the first round. Obviously, the Golden Knights could still get on a roll and get back up in the top 3 in the Pacific, but it's looking like the Kings in all likelihood. And I honestly think the Oilers probably beat the Kings in a 7-game series, unless Jonathan Quick has a 2012 hot streak. So we'll see. But I'm going to say second round is probably a pretty good bet. It would likely be Calgary in the second round, which is like a really tough series. Obviously, the Flames are a well-rounded team. They're big. They're mean. That's going to be a big challenge for the Oilers. They are 2-1 against the Flames this season. So maybe a head-to-head matchup, it's not so bad. The Flames have never really had an answer for McDavid for his entire career. He's absolutely destroyed them. But I just think with all that time to prepare, we've seen teams shut down McDavid before. They're a deeper team, but the Flames, I think, are still the best team in the Pacific Division. I don't think Kulak changes that at all. And honestly, if I was in Ken Holland's position, I would have probably been a little bit more aggressive at this deadline because I do think they have a pretty good team.
Fair enough. Now I'll pass it over to Clifton here. I know he's got one for you.
Yeah, I was just curious if you would look at like a Calvin DeHaan or anybody like that, even like a Dominic Kubalik, although I know you're more looking for defense in Edmonton. I was just curious on any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some potential to add some forward depth. I've been hearing they've been kicking tires on Johan Larsson today, so that's a potential add late in the deadline. I would say Kubalik, he has a bit of a cap hit, so they would need either salary retained or it'd have to be money in, money out. So I don't know how that would look really. How many years left on his contract?
I think it's one at like 3 point something. I'll pull it up real fast for you.
And real quick, I'll step in. Johan Larsson was actually just traded to the Washington Capitals.
Okay.
So scratch that one off the board.
Mm. Yeah, so I don't know if the Oilers are going to be adding any forwards in that case. That was the one that I was hearing was potentially out there. But yeah, I don't know. Basically, what I've been hearing around Edmonton was that they were going to go for the depth defenseman and then potentially a bottom 6 forward. So maybe there's potential for something else. But Ryan Rishaug reported that the Oilers, I think it was a few days ago, he reported that they were out on Kubalik in all likelihoods unless things change last minute. So I'm not really sure if they're going to do anything else today, to be honest with you. There's no way they're going to get a goaltender at this point. And if they get a forward, it'll be a bottom 6 guy. But it's up in the air right now whether they're done with the Kulak deal.
Fair enough. Now, I'm going to kind of transition that goalie talk away from trade deadline. If he does, stand pat and go into the offseason, where do you see Holland going for a goaltender? Because obviously what they have in the organization right now just is not going to work.
Yeah, it's an interesting offseason. I mean, he's had 3 years now to do something about the goaltending, and nothing's been done. Obviously, the Koskinen $4.5 million cap hit has really hurt. One of the lasting legacies of Peter Chiarelli that's still haunting the team a little bit. But his contract's up at the end of the season. So they have Mike Smith and Stuart Skinner under contract. Skinner has been excellent in the AHL this season, putting up really dominant numbers. And I believe he has a .916 save percentage in 12 games in the NHL this year. So I can see him being a backup goalie next season. I could see him being in a tandem with somebody. I think the Mike Smith era needs to come to an end very swiftly. He's absolutely struggled this year. I think his save percentage is .895, if I remember correct. He's nearing the age of 40. I think it would be ideal for the Oilers if Mike Smith just retired at the end of the season. Honestly, he's got one more year left at $2.5 million. If he's still with the team, I don't know. I think Darcy Kemper is an interesting option. That's a guy that they were looking at before Colorado picked him up. I mean, there's not a ton out there, but there are some options. I think honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they brought back Koskinen on a cheaper contract. I know that might sound surprising to some people, but I don't know. It depends on what the market is. They're really strapped for cap right now. The Keith deal really hurt their cap situation, I think. And I don't know. They're going to have to, if they're going to get a goaltender that's of any major improvement over what they have right now, I think they're going to have to deal with a guy like Zach Kassian or Tyson Barrie, somebody with, $3+ million on their deal that they can kind of dump out and make some room. If it was me, I like Darcy Kemper. I think that's a good option. But I don't know. We'll see. I think Stuart Skinner's a promising prospect, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go with him and somebody else next year. So it's just a matter of whether they're willing to move out the cap to spend the money, or if they bring back Koskinen for cheap, or try and go with Smith again.
So you think there's a scenario where they run it back with the same goaltending, just on a cheaper contract?
Shockingly, yes, I do. I honestly do. But I would hope in that scenario that it would be a Koskinen Skinner duo, not with Smith involved. I would hope that he would be in the minors or retired, hopefully.
Okay. Now, obviously, no big trades as of yet. We still have, about 45 minutes left until the deadline. One of the things that Ken Holland, made his prime piece of business was signing Evander Kane. What are your thoughts so far on Kane since he's joined the Oilers roster?
Yeah, he's made an immediate impact. I think he's got 20 points in 23 games. He's scoring a lot of goals. He's producing. It's been a pretty good ad. I think it's for $2 million. That's about the cheapest you're going to get a guy who's got 70+ point capabilities, right? So I think it's an excellent ad. They didn't have to burn an asset to get him. Obviously there's some risk for all the distractions that he's brought to other organizations over the course of his career. But so far in Edmonton, he seems to be fitting in just fine. No issues in the locker room that I've heard about. But I do want to say that if they are going to bring him back, there is some risk. He's on a bit of a heater right now when it comes to shooting percentage. It's not sustainable. I don't think he's going to be scoring at this rate, 5-on-5 at least, for an extended period of time. I could see, they've done some risky moves in the past, like bringing in Kassian for a 4-year contract at $3.2 million a year after he had a big season playing with McDavid, had a huge shooting percentage heater all year long. So I would be wary of that. There's some underlying numbers that suggest that Kane's going to kind of cool off and even out a little bit. But he's a great player, and if they bring him back for 2 or 3 seasons at a reasonable price tag, I wouldn't mind it at all. He's been great.
Fair enough. Garth, do you have any Edmonton Oilers talk here that you want to jump in on? I know you've probably been over there working some articles for the Leddy move.
Yeah, I'm just doing a little research, but for the Oilers, Ken Holland does like to make the interesting move. I'm curious on, do you think he's gonna spend any more? I know, this season, or the last season, he made it clear that he was not gonna spend when he didn't think the team was gonna win. And then the season before, he spent 2 seconds on Andreas Athanasiou and then a fourth for the corpse of Mike Green. So I think I'm just curious what your thoughts are. Maybe just avoid trading with Steve Yzerman could be a good start for Ken Holland. But do Oilers fans, do they think it's time to go all in McDavid and Draisaitl's prime, or are you guys under the same agreement with Ken Holland?
Oilers fans think every year with Connor McDavid is an all-in year. You can't. I mean, we're in year 7 of McDavid right now. We are panicking. It is all hell's broken loose in Oilers fan land. It's not good. If you look at other generational talents, guys like Crosby, Ovechkin, Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky, every single one of those guys except for Ovechkin won a cup in their first 7 years, and Ovi was a constant playoff contender every year. It took him till year 13 to actually win the cup, but I would say it's by far the least successful team with a generational talent, and it's time that they started spending and they started going for it, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion. And I know they're strapped for cap right now, which makes it difficult to make any major additions like teams like the Panthers and then the Lightning have done. But the teams like the Panthers and the Lightning are also strapped for cap, and they always find a way to get it done. They get creative. They get third teams in to retain salary. They, find a way to get teams to take contracts. They trade their first round picks. The Oilers are paying Ken Holland $5 million a year. He's making the most money out of any GM in the entire league, and he's getting paid to get creative, and he's not getting creative. So I would say it's been a pretty disappointing tenure. There's a lot of obviously signs at the end of Detroit that they probably shouldn't have hired him, to be honest with you. But I guess given the situation that they're in, he doesn't feel like they're one piece away from winning the Stanley Cup. I think he realizes there's a couple holes they need to plug still, and I don't think that he's going to be able to plug all of them at this deadline. So obviously a quiet day with just the Kulak deal, and I think that's probably what it's just going to end up as. So I would like to see them do more, but here we are, year 7 of McDavid, still bubble team.
Ken Holland special is not being creative.
Yeah. And Ken Holland's special is capitalizing on the talent that was left for him by a predecessor. Now, quickly here, do you think that if the Oilers continue to struggle in making a run into the playoffs, do you think maybe a McDavid or a Draisaitl or a Nurse turn around and say, hey, look, I've been here my whole career. This isn't working out anymore. I would love it for you guys to move me somewhere else. Do you think it comes to a trade request if they can't make this happen?
I think it's possible. It's very possible. It's a legitimate concern. I don't think that McDavid is the kind of guy to do that. He wants to be part of the solution. He wants to be the part of pulling them out of this. But I think that the agent is going to have a lot of sway in making that suggestion to Connor, having those decisions, those conversations with him. I think that this season they're going to be making the playoffs. I think the way Vegas is trending and the way the Oilers are trending, which, by the way, 5 wins in a row, they've looked excellent lately. They've had a huge homestand, obviously a tough one tonight against Colorado. I've heard Mike Smith's getting the start, so I'm not too optimistic about tonight, but they've looked great. So, I mean, I could see them winning around this year. I think that's enough to keep the big boys around, keep them happy for now. If the struggles continue, if they somehow slip out of the playoffs, then I would be very concerned about the future of McDavid and Draisaitl here. But I think for right now, I think they're okay.
Fair enough. Anybody else have any other Oilers specific questions?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious because you were talking about getting creative and whatnot, and I was just like, well, what could they really do? Because when you look at their cap situation, you have 5 years of McDavid at 12.5, 4 for Draisaitl at 8.5. You have 7 at Hyman for 5.5. Like, just during the duration for McDavid and Draisaitl, I mean, you're kind of locked up in cap, especially with Darnell Nurse's 9.25 kicking in. And then Cody Cece's deal kind of runs right along with that. I was just kind of curious what you would think they can do. I mean, you get $5 million when Keith comes off the books after next season, but really the majority of your cap's kind of locked up. So I'm just kind of, what would you want him to do specifically?
Yeah, so obviously it's a tricky situation, and it's 100% self-inflicted by Ken Holland, by the way, for the contracts that he's taken on for, that were 100% not necessary for him to take on. So it's self-inflicted cap troubles. I think if it was me, I would try and move Tyson Barrie. I think that Ken Holland believes that Barrie is part of the core here. I don't think that he has any plans of moving him. But first off, I wouldn't have signed Barrie in the first place. I think it's a terrible contract. And I think that seeing what some of the defensemen have gotten in the market, over the last couple of days, I think that he is a movable contract. I think he has some perceived value across the league. There are teams that could use a power play quarterback. That would free up some cap space for something, because I think Tyson Barrie just does not a fit. On that right side, Evan Bouchard is an offensive defenseman, struggles in the defensive zone. Barrie struggles in the defensive zone. You can't have two guys that can't play defense on your right side defense, especially logging that big of minutes. So I would move Barrie. Honestly, I would hopefully try and move Zach Kassian. Again, that's another contract that, it's not a great contract, but a team that has lots of cap space that's looking for some grit. You never know. It's not an easy answer, obviously, but those would be where I would start. I think adding a guy like Jacob Chychrun on the defense would be great, although I've heard that the price for him is absolutely ridiculous, so I don't know if that would have been a possibility. But there's things he could have tried. The goaltending, I don't think that the price for Fleury was that high, but I don't know if he would have waived his no trade clause to come to Edmonton. That's the only thing. So I don't know. There's a lot of things that could have potentially been done. I don't know what the market was. I don't know if how much value Barrie or Kassian would have fetched, but that's probably where I would have started to clear up the space. And for starters, I wouldn't have signed a lot of those guys to begin with. So that's my take on it. But yeah, they're in a tough spot for sure right now.
Fair enough. Now, moving away from, the Edmonton Oilers talk, we've had quite a flurry of trades already throughout the day and throughout the previous weekend. What is a trade that has shocked you the most? And what is a trade that you said, oh, wow, really? Like, where did that come from? Give us one of each.
Okay. I would say the Ottawa Senators with Travis Hamonic. He was on waivers earlier this season, so why didn't they just claim him when he was on waivers? I don't understand why they had to give up a 3rd round pick there. That was a bit of a head scratcher. And a 3rd round pick is pretty expensive for again, a guy who was waived. So that one made absolutely no sense to me. So that's probably my, what were they thinking kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
As for shockers, I'm just scrolling through the trades right now to remind myself, but I don't see anything entirely shocking here on first glance. I would just go with the Hamonic one all around. It was just made 0 sense, and I wasn't expecting it. So
yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like Ottawa is in kind of another fire sale mode again. They've got 3 trades that they've racked off. Recently you had the Hamonic deal. They dealt Brown. They dealt Sanford. They dealt Paul. So a lot of moving pieces there. Maybe that's just, a warm body that they're looking to take in to, play some minutes at a cap certainty. Because, of course, money is always in the realm of talks when it comes to an Ottawa Senators team. Let's see. You guys want to go and break down some more trades? You want to join us for that, Lane?
Yeah, sure. I'm down for whatever.
All right. So we'll pull up some of the ones that have happened recently. We're just going to kind of pick off some of the big ones right now because we're about to get into that final 30 minutes where it's going to start picking up and trades are happening left and right. So let's go with the Boston Bruins trade. Now, some of you guys on the West Coast teams here are going to be familiar with him. Hampus Lindholm and Cody Curran were traded to Boston in exchange for prospect Urho Vakanainen, a depth defensive piece John Moore, a 22 first-round pick, a 23 second-round pick, and a 24 second-round pick. Who wants to start it off with the Hampus Lindholm talk? Anybody? Any takers? Go ahead, Lane.
Yeah, I think it's a massive return for Anaheim. That's a lot. They get 3 draft picks. They get, a couple of defensemen, not impact players by any means, but for what I thought that Lindholm was going to go for, I think it's an excellent return for the Ducks. The Bruins, obviously, they signed Lindholm long-term, so I I think it makes sense for the Bruins. They needed that help on the back end. They still, I think, have some needs, but I think it makes sense for both sides. I just think that it was a huge return for Anaheim. I think that's a big win for them.
Yeah, so of course I watch a lot of Bruins. That's the team that I usually cover. And the way I kind of broke down this deal was you were really acquiring Hampus Lindholm for a first-round pick and Urho Vakanainen. Then that second-round pick can be associated with the 50% retained. And then that secondary second-round pick is strictly for taking John Moore because there was no salary retained there. And he signed for a couple more seasons at $2.75 million. So when you start to really break down where everything went for what, if you look at it that way, it actually doesn't seem like that much, especially because a day later after the trade, Boston, of course, comes out and announces they've signed Lindholm to an 8-year, $6.5 million AAV contract. When you can bring him in and lock him up and have McAvoy and Lindholm signed until 2030 as your top pair, I would give that return all day, every day. I probably would have even taken those 2 second-round picks and made it a first, personally. Now,
yeah, I mean, I can jump in quick on the Lindholm thing as well. For the Bruins window, I think the contract's good right now because the cap is friendly. But I guess my question is towards the end of when the Bergerons, the Marchands leave, how is that Lindholm deal going to look like in year 5, 6, 7? That's my only concern. I do think it's a good move and it's a win now move for Don Sweeney. So I guess that's a positive. And Urho Vakanainen is not a guy that's been really in the lineup this year. So again, not losing a piece. Again, not losing Lysell. That's the big one for me. I think Lysell's legit. And not losing Jake DeBrusk either, who's been a contributor this year.
So far, there's still a little over a half hour left. But, I mean, as far as how this deal is going to look 4 to 5 years down the road, you're coming into a new core at that point where Brad Marchand is probably going to be your aging veteran for that core, and it's going to be based around Jeremy Swayman, Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, David Pasternak, probably Brandon Carlo and Matt Grzelcyk will still be around. And then, of course, like you said, Fabian Lysell will probably, be coming up in the roster at some point in the next maybe 3 years, maybe even sooner than that. You never know. He's absolutely lighting it up in the WHL. So to me, this screams like a deal that is the Bruins trying to build for now, but also create themselves another core to build around. And that's kind of where I'm curious. They've been rumored to be looking for more top 6 help at the deadline. Can the Bruins add something that will be around for another few years? That'll be like one of the most pivotal things for the Bruins coming into the next 30 minutes, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if I could jump in on that, I think that's really important is trying to, if you have an aging core like the Bruins do, obviously Bergeron and Marchand aren't getting any younger, you need to bridge that gap. And if you can, winning now and being able to look out for the future at the same time is something that's, hard to do. But you looked at teams like the Winnipeg Jets, they had, Blake Wheeler aging, obviously Paul Stastny was getting older. So last season it was like, they needed to find a way to bridge that gap, and they just really haven't done it. It looks like they're kind of on the downswing now, with Wheeler kind of falling off a cliff a bit this season. And I just think the Bruins, they have a really good defense locked up for a really long time. And if they, obviously Bergeron over the next few years is going to be finishing up his career here, but if they can, Lysell's a good player coming in. They're going to have, cap space still in the future. I don't think they're in a dire situation per se. They have a lot of guys on really team-friendly deals. Obviously, they're known for that. And I think that they've done a really good job being able to stay in contention, although they're in a ridiculous division, but still being able to not sacrifice their entire future. So I think from that perspective, it is good, and I think they've done a much better job than Winnipeg has with their kind of aging core and their new core kind of gelling at the right time.
Yeah, and then moving on to another trade and some young and aging cores mixing in. The other top available piece coming into the market here was a Claude Giroux. And Claude Giroux ended up being traded from the Philadelphia Flyers to the Florida Panthers, along with a Connor Bunnaman, a German Rebstoff, and a 24 fifth-round pick. And, of course, Philadelphia retained 50% of his salary there. And in return, the Flyers got the coveted Owen Tippett, who looks like a perfect Philadelphia Flyer. His hair matches the jersey color. It's amazing. And a conditional 2024 first-round pick with a 23 third-round pick. Who wants to start us off with the second big trade of that day?
I'll jump in on this one to start. My only thing is it kind of sounded like Giroux only really had one destination on his list. Florida gave up a lot, and I just wonder if they could have given up less and maybe not in Owen Tippett in that trade. I think that they're a good team. They're on the brink of going over and winning the cup and going on that kind of run. I just think Claude Giroux is a great player, but with it really only being their destination, doesn't it feel like they could have given up less? That's just my thoughts on that.
Now, Garth?
Yeah, again, the Claude Giroux definitely handcuffed the Flyers in that sense, but like also that's his right. He's been there he played exactly 1,000 games, and I think he's earned some of that respect to choose where he gets to go. He also had no moving clause. But no, Florida's going all in, and it is an underwhelming return for Philadelphia, but I do think Owen Tippett could turn into a solid middle six winger. The first round pick, again, it's magic beans at this point. Who knows what it actually can turn into. But yeah, for Florida, again, huge player to get in there. I think he fits in well with Barkov and Verhaeghe, and you're not filling in the likes of Joe Thornton and Max Mamine in that first right winger spot. And you have Claude Giroux, who's a legit top line player. It just makes them all that more scary.
Now, do you think that with the Claude Giroux and the Ben Sherratt additions, along with, Haig from the Sabres, does this make them the Stanley Cup favorite or one of the top three? Where do you really see them kind of stacking up versus the rest of the contenders?
I don't man, that's a tough one. I still think Tampa Bay's, until they prove otherwise, I still think they're a legit contender. I think the Avs are probably the favorite in my eyes. Calgary's also shown up. I'd throw Florida in that 3-4 spot for contenders with Calgary, I would say. I think goaltending is my biggest concern with the Florida Panthers. I know Bobrovsky's had a pretty solid season, but again, he's been inconsistent at times, and then so is Spencer Knight. So I'm curious how that holds up.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the risks you take this time of year and trying to go for a Stanley Cup. And of course, there's a lot of time that, can tell here and injuries that can prop up. But do any of you guys have any kind of, final comments or remarks on the Hampus Lindholm or the Claude Giroux deal before we hit a commercial break? Nobody?
The only thing I'd say is, can your GM run over and tell Kyle Davidson how to work on these contracts? Because you guys always get great deals in Boston.
That's honestly, and we'll probably get into this a little bit later with Jacob Abernathy, who comes on here, but that's one of the best things about Don Sweeney. He might not know how to draft and kind of looks like a chicken with his head cut off, but he can re-sign players like no tomorrow. So that's where we're going to leave it probably for now. We'll hit a quick commercial break since we're running heavy on time. We're about 20 minutes away from the trade deadline here. So we'll come back in probably about 6 to 10 minutes roughly. And we'll be live and starting to break down the live trades and give you some reaction as things come across the table. And of course, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll be back shortly.
Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. we are excited to announce as part of our show the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. Our live coverage will be right back. Our live coverage will be right back. A quick word from our show sponsor and friends of Inside the Rink, BetUS. BetUS has your NHL, NBA, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year of live betting. Sign up for betus.com with promo code RINK for a 125% sign-up bonus. Again, use promo code RINK for your 125% sign-up bonus. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS.com. Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. We are excited to announce as part of our show the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. Our live coverage will be right back. Our live coverage will be right back. A quick word from our show sponsor and friends of Inside the Rink, BetUS. BetUS has your NHL, NBA, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year of live betting. Sign up for betus.com with promo code RINK for a 125% sign-up bonus. Again, use promo code RINK for your 125% sign-up bonus. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS.com. Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. We are excited to announce as part of our show the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. Our live coverage will be right back. Our live coverage will be right back. A quick word from our show sponsor and friends of Inside the Rink, BetUS. BetUS has your NHL, NBA, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year of live betting. Sign up for betus.com with promo code RINK for a 125% sign-up bonus. Again, use promo code RINK for your 125% sign-up bonus. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS.com. Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. We are excited to announce as part of our show the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. Our live coverage will be right back. We'll be right back. A quick word from our show sponsor and friends of Inside the Rink, BetUS. BetUS has your NHL, NBA, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year of live betting. Sign up for betus.com with promo code RINK for a 125% sign-up bonus. Again, use promo code RINK for your 125% sign-up bonus. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS.com. Welcome to the 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show, presented by Inside the Rink. We are excited to be joining you live today from all over the U.S. and Canada. Now, here's your host, Connor Green.
Alrighty. Welcome back, gentlemen. This is the final countdown. We are less than 15 minutes away from the trade deadline here. We've been conversing in the chat here with some of the trades going back and forth. Just a quick hit from each of you over the trades that have happened since we've been on the stream thus far, and we're going to start really breaking down into some of them. What are the trades or just a trade that's really piqued your interest so far today?
I'll start. I'll go ahead. Arturi Lehkonen, Colorado. I think that one is a really interesting because I think they could have made a bigger play for a bigger name. Mm-hmm. But he does bring, a lot of some of that defensive game that I think Colorado's offense is kind of missing in the middle six, I would say. Because I think I view him as more of a third line option, right? And I think they could have taken a bigger swing. But I do think that I know Frank Saravalli reported that he's going to be kind of like this year's Blake Coleman. So I do think there's some sort of fit there for a Stanley Cup final build. And I'm curious on how he does end up fitting into the lineup there in Colorado.
All right. Clifton?
Yeah, that was actually the one that I was thinking. But otherwise, the Nick Leddy to St. Louis is interesting. St. Louis is always kind of a dark sleeper. And they added some offense, which I think can help if Binnington can continue to play as he's been lately, a little bit better. So I guess if I had to go through just the one since we've been on, I think there's been some bigger ones a little bit before us hopping on. But just out of those, probably just the Nick Leddy to St. Louis.
Fair enough. Now, while we're waiting on some of the last minute trades to kind of trickle in here, just, some quick off the top here. It sounds like Andrew Kopp and the New York Rangers is looking realistic. There could be some other players involved, with the Rangers there. It sounds like a Tyler Mott per Darren Dreger. While we wait on something like that, Marc-Andre Fleury this morning went from Chicago to Minnesota for a conditional second-round pick, which could turn into a first-round pick if the Wild make it to the Western Conference Finals and Fleury has 4 or more wins. What's the take there from Chicago's perspective? I know that they were really hoping to get a first-round pick. Did this boil down to just not a market that Fleury was willing to go to, or just not enough suitors available, or both?
From what I heard, coming down to it, is Fleury wasn't willing to go to like a Washington because he's still a Penguin at heart. He didn't want to go to an Edmonton, shot that one down really quick. So Fleury kind of forced the hands of the Hawks and gave them only a few options. So that kind of hurt them with the value. And really what it came down to, I really think it was Minnesota or Colorado. Colorado didn't seem very interested. So I think it came down to just Minnesota. And I think the adding Fleury gives them a good shot. So I think they could make a run to the conference final, and the Hawks could get that first-round pick. But I think a second-round pick for a guy that you gave up nothing for to Vegas is a great add. You turn Marc-Andre Fleury into a second. You need as much draft capital to rebuild. So I think it's a good move by Kyle Davidson. He was able to at least get value, and you didn't just waste the year of Marc-Andre Fleury in the offseason that he walked anyway. So I think it's a win-win scenario. Minnesota didn't give up the first that they didn't want to give up unless they go on a deep run. So I think it's probably a B grade for Minnesota and a C plus for Chicago if I had to give it a grade. Not great, but it's just what had to be done. But I do just want to say thank you to Marc-Andre Fleury just for coming and allowing me to witness him in a Hawks jersey and play. He was unreal, and Minnesota's getting one of the best of all time. And thank you for just being here and allowing us to trade you. He could have just nixed it and said, no, I don't want to move. I want to stay with my family. And instead he allowed the Hawks to move him. So thank you, Marc-Andre Fleury. I'll take a second and potentially see if it's a first. I'm a Minnesota Wild fan, I guess, this playoff run.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the Blackhawks, this turned into probably one of the best asset management cases you could think of. They basically got Fleury for somebody that nobody had any idea who he was. Most people that you talk to still won't even know his name. And you're turning that into potentially a first-round pick. Impressive bit of business, but of course that had a lot to do with salary cap issues and what have you, but that's the way of the NHL. Before we move on to one of the next ones here, we do have Frank Saravalli and Darren Dreger confirming that Andrew Kopp has been traded to the New York Rangers. Waiting to see what the return is. Looks like a package of picks is going to be the return there. So Kopp, a big name off the board. Colorado was involved. Boston was involved. Colorado seems like they took themselves out of a lot of other things by going after Arturi Lehkonen and saying, all right, well, that's our piece. And we've got Josh Manson and we'll move on from here. As far as depth pieces go, Rickard Rakell is kind of the next name now in that forward market. There were some reports coming out about 30 minutes to an hour ago that Boston and Vegas are the top two contenders there and finalists at the table. Where do you think Rickard Rakell is a best fit? Do you think that he would be better as a Boston Bruin or a Vegas Golden Knight before we talk into potential returns?
I think it's got to be Boston. Vegas, I feel like, has a bunch of middle six wingers. And I think Rickard Rakell, to play in a line possibly with the likes of maybe Marchand Bergeron, I think the compliment would be really nice as he's a really good playmaker. And when he plays with elite players, I think his best season when he was on Getzlaf's wing. And since he's kind of gotten taken off Getzlaf's wing, I think he's struggled a little bit. He's not really able to push play all by himself. So I think on that top line with the Bruins, I think it'd be a really nice fit. Because I mean, that third line for Boston with Frederick, Coyle, and is it still Craig Smith? Connor, I know you're the Boston guy.
Yep.
I think that line's a really good. I think you should leave that. Don't touch it. I think the tinkering needs to be done in the top six. So I think Rakell could be a nice fit right there.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you're looking at the trade, you're assuming that Jake DeBrusk is probably going to be a piece going the other way, just because of his age and how he would potentially fit into a younger Ducks roster. So that leaves you an opening on your top line right wing, which you could slot Rakell right into. If the Bruins are keeping DeBrusk and they're really looking for a package of picks, then I don't think it necessarily makes sense. But on the flip side of that, talking about Vegas, everything that I've seen attached to Vegas and Rakell that's popped up so far today has mentioned that salary could potentially be going the other way. You've had Evgeny Dadonov's name come up in some trade rumors periodically. You've had Riley Smith. Do you think Vegas really has the pieces left to be making more additions with all their players that are on LTIR? If some of them start coming back, you just won't have the cap space to bring everybody back onto the roster, legally speaking, in the NHL cap world. Where do you see Vegas kind of playing out in the next, 5 to 10 minutes?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be money in, money out for Vegas. I know I saw something with Riley Smith as well, that they were talking either a trade or extension. So that's a little bit confusing. Obviously, the Dadonov thing, it was rumored to Anaheim. So again, that'd be interesting for Anaheim's perspective if they're going to be trading Raquel to Boston and then also helping out Vegas. So, but yeah, if they were able to move Dadonov and Smith, that could help out with bringing back Mark Stone, as I think the money would even out there. But then you have to worry about Robin Lehner as well. A couple other big names. I think, is Martinez still on LTIR as well?
Correct.
Yeah, it's another huge name. And I mean, I think Martinez has also been a huge loss, and I think it's part of the reason they've been struggling so much, because I think he's a really good defenseman. Yeah, so I'm really curious to think. I think they do try to add a depth piece, though. I don't know if it's going to be Raquel, but maybe a guy that's making a little less on the cap.
Fair enough. Now, Clifton, you see a little bit more of the Vegas Golden Knights and kind of tied to that team via the Marc-Andre Fleury trade there. What do you see potentially coming out of Vegas that could be an impactful addition?
I really don't see them doing too much. I think injuries kind of hurt their year. I think that the cap scenario is interesting for them and how the timing of coming back is going to play for them. But I do think they might make a smaller move. Like, I'm going to use Ryan Carpenter, but that kind of style, like a fourth line, more defensive depth player. I don't see them making a splash. I don't think that they have the cap space to really do it. I think that they're probably just more focused on trying to get out of the skid. I think that at the players that they were looking at, if they were going to make any type of move, would have been maybe a little bit bigger and moving somebody out. And I just don't think that that's there for them. I just think that they're kind of stuck where they are, and that's kind of all they got.
Yeah. Now, something that I've been toying around with in my head as far as the Vegas Golden Knights go is you've really seen them kind of be a savage, in the terms of willing to wheel and deal players who, mean quite a bit to the franchise, the roster, the fans. Nate Schmidt is a name there. Of course, Marc-Andre Fleury is probably the biggest one. Could you foresee an issue at some point where players avoid wanting to go to Vegas or sign with Vegas unless they've got some type of trade protection there?
I think it definitely. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I think it only matters if they're winning. If they're winning, I think players are going to kind of let it slide like they have been. And I think the second that they fall off, that teams and players won't want to go there. You're going to hear agents a little less willing, and you might kind of get an Edmonton kind of vibe. They just don't want to go there because of the kind of feeling around the GM that you're not safe and you're not going to get respected, and he's just going to deal you, and it's a business. But if they're winning, I don't see them having any issues, because who wants a cup ring more than an NHL player? That's what they've spent their whole life trying to chase, and they're going to go to any team, regardless of who it is, to try to get that opportunity.
Well, I think it's safe to say, before Garth chimes in here, that the one who wants a Stanley Cup ring more than those players is probably Julien Brisebois, because he's going for it all year, every year. But Garth, go ahead. What do you think about the Golden Knights and the savagery their general managers have partaken in?
Yeah, I don't know if it's more so the general manager. Good talk there. General manager or ownership. I think Bill Foley is. I was listening to Frank Saravalli, and he mentioned something about their introductory when they first revealed the crest, and he was like, a Golden Knight never retreats; he only moves forward. So I think if he deems it's a little bit more of fantasy hockey, I think, for him, and he deems that the team's not going in the right direction, he's going to make a move. You can argue whether or not that's a good thing. And what Clifton was saying, I don't think any player is really going to think about it as long as they're winning. Now, after this season, let's say they miss the playoffs, I think it might be a different conversation this summer, especially if they decide, if the owner is like, well, things weren't good, I'm going to blow it up. That could be a huge factor.
Yeah. definitely going to be a huge factor. And of course, salary cap is always a factor, which is, going to be their impending doom this offseason. Riley Smith is going to be up on a contract, and doesn't look like they're going to be able to resign him with all the salary that they have on their roster now. So, at one point, does all of this catch up to Vegas, where trading away picks and prospects and basically living on acquiring free agents? When does that end? Like, they want to win a Stanley Cup in the first 5 years or bust, according to the owner Foley. How long do you think, years wise, this will take to fall apart because the cupboards are just completely empty? Because one thing you should also take into account is the roster is not the youngest either, because these players that they're, ponying up the money for aren't spring chickens.
Yeah, for sure. I think they still have a couple good pieces in Brendan Brisson, who's he's at Michigan right now, and he's having a really good season. Also played for U.S. in the Olympics. But again, they do need to make picks. So I think it's a couple more years. They have this runway of signing guys and then wheeling and dealing future draft picks until they have to have a serious conversation about if they don't win. I think if they win, that changes a lot of things. With the likes of Eichel, Stone, Pacioretty, obviously, it's reasonable the core could win and you could stick with that core for a few more seasons. But if they're unsuccessful, you have to think about a retool or a full rebuild.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I'm curious of, because you always hear the argument that a team needs to be in the playoffs and, kind of needs to get their feelings hurt and have a tough loss to really, give them that extra push, that experience, that drive in the playoffs to win a Stanley Cup. If they keep turning over significant roster players year after year, is that even feasible? Or are you just hoping that you get lucky and put the right parts together to pursue the cup?
I think it's a mix of both there. I think I kind of agree with both statements you just made. You look at like a team like Toronto where they've struggled and they have not changed the core really at all. And then you have Vegas, who is shaking it up at all, and both haven't really. I mean, Vegas has gone farther, but eventually the treatment of scaring the guys into performing, you know what I mean, to be the best or else you're going to leave, doesn't really work if you keep doing it and you're not winning, because it's just nothing changes. Where Toronto, also the same thing. It's kind of a state of mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
Not mediocrity in the sense of not making the playoffs, but mediocrity of being okay with just being in the first round and that.
Yeah, and not getting to the overall goal of the owner to win that, that Stanley Cup in the first 5 years. Which, let's be honest, for everybody who's a hockey fan, we all laughed, right? We all laughed when Foley came out and he said, this is going to be the best expansion team you've ever seen. We're going to win the Stanley Cup in the first 5 years, so on and so forth. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. Like, you don't know how to run a league, a team in the league. You're going to be in Vegas. It's not a traditional hockey market. And then, lo and behold, most of us looked like idiots, and they went deep in the playoffs multiple years in a row. So all I've got to say for a Vegas Golden Knight fan is you guys are so spoiled. You are so lucky. Please don't start complaining if your team is trash in another 2 years, because you've had, 6 or 7 years of just absolutely selling the farm for a Stanley Cup. That would be so disappointing.
It's a true
if I could jump.
Okay.
If I could jump in as a Hawks fan, you could see just how quick you can go from the top to bottom and how long you could be stuck at the bottom. Like, you go for it when you can, and when the wheels fall off, sometimes the wheels fall off. So Vegas fans, I think, should just enjoy it while they have it. And if to circle back a little bit, to when the wheels fall off, I think really depends on Alex Petrangelo's play. I think his contract's huge, and if he can stay at a top level during it, that they'll be fine. And then Jack Eichel's health, obviously, he's been a little injury prone. I think that's a big deal in Vegas. But I think Vegas fans really have had an unbelievable run. Nobody would have ever thought this would happen. And that even if the wheels, they fall off this year and that was it, that they should enjoy it.
Yeah.
It is a true welcome to the NHL moment. Finally get to supper with the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, hey, in Red Wings land over there, you guys had a good 20-something years of a run. So to each their own. But
Yeah,
now the trade deadline has passed. There can be no more trades from this point forward that haven't already been discussed. Each NHL team has to have submitted their trade to the league to be reviewed for a trade call. So, of course, we're going to start getting things trickling out over the next hour. There have been some significant names that have come across the board that have not been moved. And it looks like Jacob Chikrin is staying put in Arizona along with Phil Kessel. And then the Canucks look like they are keeping JT Miller, Connor Garland, and Brock Besser. And coming across the board right now from Jeff Merrick, Elliot Friedman, and Frank Saravalli, Ricard Raquel is being dealt from the Ducks to the Penguins. That's a pretty significant one there. Of course, because you've got the last season of Sidney Crosby, Malkin, Letang all being together. Let's take a quick moment while we're waiting for some other trades to come across here. What are your guys' first reaction to Ricard Raquel to the Penguins?
I like it. I think that's again, he's going to fit in the top 6 there. They've struggled with Kasperi Kapanen this year. I'm curious if he actually goes the other way, maybe in this deal. But no, I think Ricard Raquel, he can fit in on that second line with Malkin, and you can play with high skill guys. And also he makes. I know Penguins don't have a lot of cap space, and Ricard Raquel makes what 3.8, I think off the top of my head. So I think in that sense, it's also a really good fit.
Yeah, and it actually is coming out from Chris Johnston that it is a prospect and a pick in return for Raquel. So it doesn't look like anything is coming off the roster.
Yeah, to piggyback off Garth, though, I do think that's a really good move by Pittsburgh. I just don't think it puts him over the hump, though. To me, it doesn't make them a contender. It's a good move. He could stay there next year and fit depending on how they want to do Malkin's contract and all that. I think that's a really solid fit, but to me, it doesn't move the needle and it doesn't make Pittsburgh a contender to me.
Yeah, I'm not willing to underestimate the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think Mike Sullivan is legit, probably one of the best coaches in the NHL. And the Penguins, their mantra under him has just been better than the sum of their parts. And so I'm curious obviously the Jeff Carter extension was big. I do like Jeff Carter a lot, and I think he's proven this year that he's been pretty good. I don't think they're a true Colorado contender, but I think they're kind of on par with a Bruins in that sense, that secondary maybe could take a little run. But yeah, I'm curious. I do like Pittsburgh's team.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you've got names like Chris Letang, Jeff Carter, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, you know that the Penguins are going to be all in. They also have, the question marks looming. Is Letang coming back? What's going to happen with Rust, Malkin up front? You're not going to be able to sign them both. So this really feels like a kick it down the hallway here. We're just going to push it all in yet again. We've still got our core pieces who we're going to keep going for it with. I don't know. Looks good.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other things that came out just before the deadline is Jesperi Kotkaniemi, which the Carolina Hurricanes had offer sheeted from Montreal. Looks like he signed an 8-year contract extension. Pulling up some of the terms right now. So, of course, now it looks so much better, with the picks that they gave up in that. Let's see here.
Yeah, I do think with Kotkaniemi as well, I think he's going to fill in when they lose Trocheck next year free agency. He's going to fill into that second line role. And I think we can finally see what he truly can be with playing with high skill players. I mean, he's played on the fourth line. He's had pretty good results, but I mean, he's only averaging 10 to 12 minutes a night. So I'm curious to see what he gets in a bigger role, playing with a Svechnikov, let's say.
Yeah. So he signed an 8-year, $38.56 million deal that carries a cap hit of just above $4.8 million. And let's see. Looks like Chicago and Calgary. We're talking about Ryan Carpenter.
I haven't quite
out of
seen anything
Chicago.
coming through yet, but I'm hoping he was moved. I just saw just the one little tweet from Elliot Friedman, but nothing from the Chicago side quite yet on that.
Mm-hmm.
He could be an interesting ad for a depth piece.
Yeah, for very cheap. Probably fourth, fifth, if that. Very, very cheap.
Yeah, I would say mid to low level pick.
Yeah,
And
great ad for your PK too.
A quick other name here that Aaron Portzline is reporting out of Columbus is that there's some chatter that Max Domi could be on the move. This is somebody that was pretty, widely rumored to be on the move. Another change of scenery that would see him on yet another team after the three that he's recently played for in Arizona, Montreal, and Columbus. Do you guys have any kind of, thoughts and opinions on a Max Domi who's kind of floundered around in the league and never really, blossomed into what everybody thought he would be?
I do think he has the raw talent. I think a lot of it is mental with Max Domi. I feel like he tries to sometimes play a little too far on the edge and it takes himself out of the game skill-wise. Like when he's first moved on to teams, aside from Columbus, I think he's kind of had a rough tenure in Columbus. But like with when he first got traded, and maybe it's just the Habs, but he had that great, was it 72 points his first year in Montreal?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And given the top six role there, I think he's thrived. I think that talent's still there. I'm not saying he's going to be a 70-point guy. I think that's far-fetched, but I don't know, maybe a half a point per game guy. I think that gets you a good middle six option.
Fair enough. Now, he comes with a 5.3 AAV on his contract this year. What could you see him potentially getting as a new contract? Do you think he's going to get a raise, or do you think he takes somewhat of a pay cut on
He'll
an
take a pay
extension?
cut.
Yeah, I wouldn't be paying him that much. I would expect it to come closer to the $4 million range, probably 3 to 4 years would be my guess.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere around like 2 years for like $4 million.
All right. Now, pick one team with the trades that you've heard thus far throughout the last week up until, right now. Who is your new favorite to win the Stanley Cup as of right now?
Man.
That's a tough one.
I do like Calgary, but like I said this before, I still think they're missing that horse in the back end that most teams that win the Stanley Cup do have. I'm gonna stick with Colorado. I think I am a little bit underwhelmed with what they did today. I do like Lehkonen, but I think they could have done more for another top six and pushing Natushkin down, who would have been an elite third line player. Again, still a great top six. I mean, I think it's one of the best in the NHL. I love their defense. Goaltending has been really good of late. I think they're just, and again, one of the best centers in the NHL. So I do like Colorado a lot.
Colorado would be my favorite out of the West for sure, but I think your Stanley Cup champions coming out of the East again. I think the East is deeper, and I think it's funny, but I think both teams you're looking at are in the state of Florida. I think you're looking at your back-to-back champion and the Lightning. I think they added Brendan Hagel, who should be an absolute playoff performer. He's got that style, that grit, plays hard, high energy, goes into any corner. And then you have the Florida Panthers, who are adding a lot at the deadline. Their goaltending's there. They have a backup that's Spencer Knight, who's young. And if he does have to play, let's say Bob falls off, a young kid like that could come in and have that mindset of like he doesn't really understand how big the moment is if they need. Or if Bobrovsky keeps playing well, they have Bobrovsky. I think they have the depth on defense as long as Aaron Ekblad comes back, which I thought I saw he was rumored to come back right around the first round of the playoffs. So as long as he can come back, and I would think it's between Tampa and Florida. And if I had to put my money on it on BetUS, it would have to be the Lightning. But I do what Florida did, and I think it's going to come down between them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely there with you. And I think for all of our gamblers out there with our show sponsor, BetUS, it's probably a safe bet that the Stanley Cup winner is going to come out of the Atlantic Division. It's almost a safe bet as you can get. I mean, all of the teams in the East are really loading up, but specifically in the Atlantic Division, not so much in the Metro, but of course with Rickard Rakell coming to the Penguins there, that's a little something. And we can now confirm, we don't know the return yet, but Max Domi is being moved, and he was traded to the Carolina Hurricanes.
Wow, that might just change my last thought. That you can add them into the list with the Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning. I think that's a tough division now. I think that adds a lot of depth that Carolina didn't have offensively, and I think Max Domi can play in the playoffs. I think he's a playoff kind of performer with that edge. I hope they didn't give up anything on the immediate roster, because then my thoughts are going to change. But if it's just some draft picks and they're kind of pushing the chips in to keep up with Tampa and Florida and everyone else in the East, I think that's a really good move, and it kind of puts them not on the same tier. I still think I would go with Tampa or Florida, but it puts them definitely closer in that conversation.
Yeah, and then, you know, in the Metropolitan Division there, you have the New York Rangers, who ended up acquiring Andrew Kopp, Tyler Mott, Frank Vetrano. So they added a lot of depth pieces. And of course, you know, they've had a lot of really high-end draft picks recently. So, you know, they already have the Lamborghinis in place, if you will. Just need them to kind of grow and blossom and play up to their potential. So that division's, you know, getting interesting. Marcus Johansson goes to Washington. I can't think of the other name. Johan Larsson gets traded to Washington earlier today. So it really looks like a lot of pieces this trade deadline are coming into that Eastern Conference. And of course, that's where it looks like a Stanley Cup winner is going to come out of. Are you guys seeing anything that's piquing your interest coming across the Twitter wires right now?
Only thing is, with the Raquel deal, now a roster player is added to that as well.
Roster player, is that where Kapanen?
That's my question. Second round pick, prospect, and roster player from Bobby Margarita.
Bobby Margarita. That's honestly one of my favorite things about this trade deadline, aside from Kevin Weeks going live and breaking trades from everywhere under the sun. And he's had a few videos.
You guys see the trash can?
The trash can on the head. Yep.
It's the best one yet.
It's entertaining. It's funny. And one of the things that I was talking with producer Ray about earlier is ESPN and TNT signed a huge media deal with the NHL this last offseason. Am I reading too far into this, or is it too much of a coincidence that Kevin Weeks is seemingly getting all of the breaking news before some of the other insiders?
Little tinfoil hat theory you got going on?
Maybe, but it just seems like, you know, Kevin Weeks prior to this trade deadline wasn't, you know, a huge insider. But this trade deadline, all of a sudden, now that ESPN has media rights, he's breaking them all.
I will give him credit for the Verona Mantha deal last year. He did break that. I do think he's also been in conversations a couple times for GM spots, so I think he definitely has those connections before the ESPN deal came through. But it probably factors into some of it, because I think TSN obviously had the first major TV deals in Canada, and that's where a lot of those guys first made their connections. And then with Sportsnet, I'm pretty sure they get the TV rights in like 2014. Mm-hmm. I don't really know what Elliot Friedman, how many trades he was breaking pre-2014. So I think there is some, like, you know, there's definitely something to what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know. It's too convenient to not ask the question, right?
Yeah, right. It's fun.
Now,
follow the money, right?
Absolutely. One of
we're-
the other trades that we were talking about earlier, and I think I might have made a mistake and I said Carolina. If I did, my apologies. But looks like it's official now that the Blackhawks are trading Ryan Carpenter to the Calgary Flames for a 5th-round pick in 2024. So there's another depth piece off the boards.
Yeah, I'll take it. Take a 5th for Ryan Carpenter. I think Calgary gets a little depth. It helps your argument with Calgary going on that run. I think that's a really solid piece for them. I do think it'll help them go on that deeper run.
Now, seeing a lot of Carpenter in Chicago, what should Calgary Flames fans be expecting to see out of Carpenter?
0 offense, but really good defense. Willing to throw his body around. Good PK guy. Probably average in the dot, somewhere around 50%. If I had to guess off my head, not the best, not the worst. But he's a good 4th-line player. But just don't expect to get any offense at all out of him. But he's also not going to give up much. So it's just a good player to have in a playoff scenario.
Fair enough. I mean, you have to admire what you're seeing out of Calgary right now. They went out and got Yarncroke. They went out and got Carpenter. They got to Foley way before the deadline. And they seem to be really going for the fence. After a team who was, on the fence of, are we going to trade Gaudreau? Does Monahan need to go somewhere? Shaking things up to now all of a sudden they might be trying to push for a Stanley Cup. Kind of a huge turn of events there, but things in Calgary are looking interesting to say the least.
For sure. And I think they waived Brad Richardson a couple days ago. So I mean that might be a natural fit at 4C for Ryan Carpenter.
They should slide in really nice for them in that role, and like I said, give them some PK minutes and loosen it up a little bit for them. But yeah, they should. I think they should be a team going for it. I mean, they have some guys that have been there for a little bit, and when you have a team and a core that's been together, you either have to go for it or change something if it's not working. And they changed something last year, got the goaltending. It didn't quite turn out how they wanted it to last year. This year it's better. So their team's good. They're looking like a team that can go on a run. So I like what their GM's doing. If I was a Flames fan, I wouldn't be upset with anything, and I would want them to push some chips in and kind of try to make that run. And I think they have a good chance to go out of the West. I think Colorado is my favorite, and then probably them. They probably come in second. And then I think it's a pretty big gap really in the West after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree on that. Now, in the West, just for giggles, who do you think makes the Western Conference Final? I mean, you really only have a couple teams that are really pushing.
Minnesota.
You're really going to hope for Minnesota just because of that.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I'm not letting it die.
Blackhawks Nation is all of a sudden now rooting for their mortal enemies across the way. Got it.
Just for the one run. That's it. And after the conference finals, that's it. They can lose there.
Don't want them to win a Stanley Cup with Marc-Andre Fleury. No? They have a lot of years.
I would give it up for the Flower, I guess.
Garth, you have any comments there?
I think the easiest would be Calgary, Colorado in the final. A sneaky team that I could see going on a run is LA. I'm curious if they do make another, I haven't seen anything that they're done for the day or not. So maybe they made a late acquisition. Oh my God. Yeah. Could speak. Maybe they made a late trade to see, fill in. I think they're missing that another top 6 forward to really go far. I know their defense has been absolutely obliterated to injury this year, and that's why they picked up Troy Stetcher from the Red Wings late. And I do think he's a good depth add. But I just love the system they play. I think I saw something, they're the 6th best record over the past month, I think. I think the system they play, it's kind of like Daryl Sutter. Oh my God. Yeah, I think they could take a little trip back down memory lane, i.e. 2014, 2012, and go on a little run.
They're a fun team. So I wouldn't mind seeing LA go on a run.
So the way that I kind of think of the LA Kings is very similar to the New York Rangers. It's a team who was good that decided they were going to kind of bust down the team a little bit and do like a rebuild, which really turned into more of a retool because they never really bottomed out and they were able to recoup enough picks and assets. And they could both easily, in my opinion, with the veteran players and the goaltending that these two teams have, could easily make a push for the Stanley Cup. And I was someone who did pick the Rangers as my dark horse Stanley Cup favorite before the season. But I'll be honest, looking at what the Rangers have done, and of course, there's no reports that they're done now. Just my assumption off the little flurry of moves here. I don't know that they've done enough. Like, I understand from a Rangers perspective of you don't want to give up too many assets because you're still technically in that retool time frame. But if they were able to add a legitimate top six piece, I think they would have had the goaltending and the defense and the depth in their forward group to make a run at the Stanley Cup playoffs. So it's tough. I guess my question to you guys is, what would you rather see as a fan in your perspective bases there? Would you rather your team reward the players on the roster and give them a run at the playoffs? Or would you hope that he holds pat and keeps assets to keep retooling?
If I was a Rangers fans in that, I think that they should look kind of deeper down and that the cap could catch up to them or a player could fall off or somebody can get injured, and they should have went for it more. You have a goaltender that is having one of the best seasons of all time behind you. He's hot, and a hot goaltender alone can drag you to the finals. Just ask the Montreal Canadiens. They have offensive ability in Panarin, Zibanejad, and Kreider has 20 something power play goals. He's playing really good. I just think that they had the flexibility to go out and really add. And even if you gave up the future, you're still young. You have young defensemen that coming up, and Lundqvist and I forget the other one, Jones, right? Is it Jones?
Yeah,
Zach,
Lundqvist, Zach Jones,
Brady
Schneider.
they have a lot of young prospects.
So many players.
They could have sold a little bit and went for it this year, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the murky middle here. But it looks like, Garth, we've got a little something for you coming down the pipeline here. The Detroit Red Wings are trading forward Nemestikov to the Dallas Stars for a 4th-round pick. Now, everybody was expecting this might be one of the names moved before the deadline. Is a 4th-round pick what you were expecting to get? Was it more? Was it less? And what should Dallas Stars fans be looking to expect from Nemestikov?
Kind of wash, rinse, repeat for Nemestikov. I think the past 2 deadlines he's been traded at, they were for 4th-round picks. So it's kind of funny that he goes for the same exact value. But he's been a guy that's fit in everywhere this year on the roster. He's played, more recently he's been playing on the top line with Larkin and Raymond, but he's played on every single line this year. Not much of a power play guy, but good penalty killer, very good defensive impacts analytically, which I guess, I don't know if Dallas really needs any more defensive forwards. So that will be interesting. I do like Nemestikov a lot. I do think he's a good pickup.
Fair enough. Now we will be having another guest coming on here shortly. One of the next things coming out, and I was kind of giggling here as you were talking because I'm seeing my Boston Bruins Twitter feed absolutely losing their mind. Reports are now coming out that Jake DeBrusk will not be moving, and he will remain a Boston Bruin at least until the end of the year. Now, I'm not going to go too far into this because we will be bringing on a guest here in a little bit who we're going to get into more Boston talk with. But did you guys expect to see Jake DeBrusk on the move, or did you think that the Bruins should keep him until the rest of the year, especially after inking a 2-year contract extension earlier today?
I personally thought that 2-year extension was just the addition to move him. I thought it was just a way to get value and to get another team interested in him. It's surprising to see that Boston didn't move him, but Sweeney said that he wasn't going to move him and get worse now. So with the extension in, it's definitely no loss for Boston there. So why not keep him, take the run, and deal with it in the offseason? I guess it's a win-win for Boston fans is the way you'd look at it, because you now have 2 years to figure out what you're going to do with him.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a maybe. I still think that his contract extension was him trying to put his best foot forward. His qualifying offer was actually more than what his extension was signed for, which caused a lot of teams to kind of get cold feet when it comes to him. So I still see him being moved in the offseason. The Bruins have never said that, no, we're not going to honor his trade requests. He still wants to be traded. We still want to be able to facilitate that if needed. But of course, Don Sweeney stuck to his guns that he wouldn't move Jake DeBrusk for the sake of moving him. Really wanted to make his team better up front, which is kind of where Garth comes into play here. The Red Wings were interested in getting a Jake DeBrusk, and I know there is some interest on the market for Bertuzzi in Boston. We don't have any confirmations of anything else yet coming out of Detroit, but of course Stevie Y keeps things pretty tight. So I think right now we're about a half hour past the deadline. Still some trades trickling in here, but I think now is probably the best time as ever to get in a short break, and we'll bring on one of our guests, and we'll come back to you probably in about 2 to 3 minutes, just a real quick short break, and fire up some Bruins talk.
Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. We are excited to announce, as part of our show, the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. Our live coverage will be right back. Our live coverage will be right back. A quick word from our show sponsor and friends of Inside the Rink, BetUS. BetUS has your NHL, NBA, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year of live betting. Sign up for BETUS.com with promo code RINK for a 125% sign-up bonus. Again, use promo code RINK for your 125% sign-up bonus. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS.com. Welcome to the 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show, presented by Inside the Rink. We are excited to be joining you live today from all over the U.S. and Canada. Now, here's your host, Connor Green.
All righty, and we are back from the quick break, and as promised, we're going to start getting into a little Bruins talk, and we are going to bring on Matt Berry of the Bruins Benders podcast and Inside the Rink Bruins writer. Welcome, Matt.
Bruins fans are a little disappointed, I think, with what has happened recently. as we've noticed that they won't make another move for a forward, and he needed a top 6 forward, in my opinion. Eric Haula has done an admirable job in between Hall and Pasternak, but really could use a second line center or a right wing. And there was talk, of course, for months, it seems, that Jake DeBrusk would be moved on from. And he's done okay. He started out doing really well on that top line. It's been up and down since, but he's wanted out, and the Bruins really could have used another top 6 forward. They do get the 2 defensemen. They get some size. They get Lindholm. But I think Bruins fans, everything that they did leading up to today is probably less than some by the fact that they didn't improve the offensive end.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, the Bruins aren't, done. According to the insiders here, there's still potential for a trade to come down the pipeline. But the first thing that I want to start off with, because I saw one of the tweets you guys had out there from the podcast account, with Jake DeBrusk staying put and not moving, what was the first thing that came to your mind?
Well, just that, what's his motivation level? And I think that part of the motivation for him was that he got it off his chest that he wanted to leave. They, by all accounts, were trying to do right by him and move him. So I think that he was trying to build his value. He saw a light at the end of the tunnel in his own mind. And now if he's not moved, does he become more inconsistent again, like he has been in the past? And there's been questions about desire and motivation and, will to win and all those things. He's had some sort of falling out, or there's some sort of relationship problem there with Bruce Cassidy. So I think really the question is, what are they going to get out of this guy? And not only that, it's not like he's on the 3rd or 4th line and you're trying to squeeze something out of him. Yeah. He's your top line right wing playing on the offside. So that's a problem. And I hope that he'll continue to be a pro and continue to produce and play well. But I question his desire now that he hasn't been moved.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that as one of the questions. But I also, I could see it from the other direction. Now that the trade deadline is passed, he's got his money locked in. Does this make him sort of relax a little bit now that the trade deadline's gone? He can say, okay, I'm here and I'm in Boston. I'm, with my friends that I've made on this team. We can worry about this after the playoffs and after the season for a trade.
Yeah. I think that he has his money. He has $4 million a year the next 2 years. So he has a contract. So maybe that eases his mind some. He did lead the stretch this morning on the ice. So the players like him, and the players have continued to support him, and he's still a part of the team. It's a very odd situation where a guy wants to leave, started playing well, and didn't rescind the trade request, but his and it's a credit to Bergeron and some of the leaders on that team that they've they stuck by him. And now they'll need him. They'll need him big time because they're going to need some production from that top line. And my questions now are him and, of course, Haller at second line center, because the last 5 or 6 games he hasn't done all that well. They moved him down to the 4th line. So there's some real question marks there among the forward group.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, pending any surprises, which, we may get 1 or 2 trickle deals for the next hour or so. It just looks like Don Sweeney did his big shopping ahead of the deadline with a Hampus Lindholm, who we'll get into in a minute. But he looks like he made a swing and a miss on the front end and just decided to stand pat, which kind of seems like a mistake. But Don Sweeney's MO as the Bruins general manager has been go for the big swings in the offseason and then acquire 1 million depth pieces as you can at the trade deadline. And this year he did the absolute opposite. He signed all depth pieces in free agency and went, big fish hunting for Hampus Lindholm there. And of course, the Hampus Lindholm deal was a cap clearing gymnastics there, as well as trying to lock up a piece to be McAvoy's partner for the next 8 years. What's been your reaction so far on the trade and then the signing for Hampus Lindholm?
I thought the trade was great. They didn't really give up any of their top prospects, which I was, concerned about. I probably would have been okay with Lowry if they are getting a defenseman in return, but they didn't have to do that. And I'm okay with the draft capital leaving because they haven't drafted that well anyway. I know a lot of fans are up in arms about so much, so many draft picks and such. Euro is a nice player. He's 5 years now removed from being drafted. Lindholm's a better player and probably will, and Vacanine probably won't be as good as Lindholm ever. And then, of course, you have, John Moore's contract going, which I thought was great to rid yourself of that contract. And you also had them pay some of the salary of Lindholm in return. And you actually gained a little bit of cap space. I thought it was a real home run for them. And then, look, the extension is what it is. $6.5 million is the going rate for top, D pair. And, with McAvoy in for 8 years and now Lindholm in for 8 years, you have your top, at least either top pair or Lindholm will play top four, for the next however many years. So I thought the deal was great. My problem now is you didn't really improve that much in the front end. So you probably won't win the cup. Now you have to question whether or not they just had to wait and then sign Lindholm in the offseason and not lose any draft capital at all because they, like you said, they swung and missed on the front end. So that's my only question now is it does put a damper on it some because now I don't think they can really they have to beat Tampa Bay, Florida, Carolina, Colorado, potentially. I mean, that's murderer's row of teams. I don't think they are as good as any of those teams. So if you can't win the Stanley Cup or even get to the finals, then I would question whether or not you just should have waited and then just kind of reloaded in the offseason with Lindholm.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the things that's been curious to me. We just are getting some news here that it looks like there's 33 trades piled up in the queue at the Central Registry.
Good.
That is a massive amount of trades like that. We might have to come back at 9:00 tonight and do a quick live stream to wrap some of those up.
Right.
But one of the major things, leading up to this deadline where, you saw Sweeney only make one deal today. It doesn't make sense to pay an extra pick to Anaheim to retain salary and take salary like that if you weren't ready to weaponize and use the assets to fill that space in the front. Right. So part of me, before I kick it over to Garth here, part of me has got to believe that one of these 33 deals waiting on a trade call has got to be something significant in the Bruins forward depth. Could be wrong, and we could be, disappointed on that end. And if it really is it, I still won't be mad as a Bruins fan because now we have McAvoy and Lindholm until 2030. So I'll take that as a win. But of course, Bergeron's never getting any younger. I'll take the Sidney Crosby effect of selling the farm for every year he's here. But Garth, I know you do follow the Bruins, even though you report on the Red Wings for us. What do you have for Matt Barry over here as far as the Bruins go?
Yeah, I'm just curious on how you feel the bottom six depth is for the Bruins. I do like their third line currently, and I know you brought up the issues with Halla and Nebraska with inconsistency, but I'm curious on how the bottom six holds up for the Bruins come playoff time.
Yeah, it's funny. We do a segment on our podcast called Whipping Boys, where we each have taken a guy that we just hammer all year long. And Trent Frederick has been that guy for me from the beginning because he's a first round pick, which isn't his fault. Probably more of a third round talent, and then he needs to be edgy. He's going to fight a little bit. He's going to support his teammates. He's going to play physically. He's going to get in front of the net, and he hadn't done that for a long time. Until he found Charlie Coyle and Craig Smith and the puck possession that they have and two good pros, and he's really latched on to that group. I still think we're on borrowed time with Freddie. I think that I'd rather have Haller slip down there and get a second line center. But since you may not be able to do that right now, you have to really hope that Frederick will continue to play as well as he is. I like the fourth line a lot. I like Nosek. I like Lazar. Lazar was a nice little pickup last trade deadline with Taylor Hall. He's been fine. He's a guy who can grind out and forecheck and be difficult to play against to the fourth liner. So that's fine. But I'm really concerned about Frederick being able to sustain what he's done because he's not an offensive threat much at all, even though I think he's had 8 points in 8 games or whatever. But that's a real anomaly. I think that if Freddie continues to play well, because I think Coyle and Smith have had great chemistry even before this line was generated, this numbers line, sequence line, whatever you want to call it. But I think that Freddie's the key to the whole thing. If he continues to play well, then I think their bottom 6 is fine. As long as there's no injury in it, because they don't have a ton of depth there. Anton Blee was drafted 9 years ago. I think he has as many points as I do in the league. So that's just a guy that just skates around. But they don't have a lot of depth there, but I think right now as constituted, the bottom 6 is pretty good. I'm just concerned about that, that second line center, not only now, but in the future.
Yeah, I kind of look at the Bruins as like just loading up what they're good at, which is defense, and then hopefully with that will impact goaltending in a positive way. And you hope to win maybe some 3-2 games down the stretch. I don't know. That just
I think that's true. I mean, that's going back to the old Claude Julien, get in front of the net with Dennis Seidenberg and Chara and those guys, and really be difficult to play against and give up the fewest goals in the league and so forth. They have added size. I think I'd like to see Brown. He does add some size. If he can play the right side with Forbort on the left, that brings Clifton to a 7th defenseman, which is a much better role for him. I think he plays too much. He's okay to slide in there for 2 or 3 games, but he gets overexposed. They've had a real hard time finishing games, and that has a lot to do with McAvoy and his pairing. Grzelcyk has been good with them. The advanced analytics are off the charts with them. I think they may be number 1 in 5-on-5 in the league, but at the end of the game with the physicality and guys getting to the net and it gets the tension ramps up, they've had a hard time with that. And I think Lindholm will definitely help in that regard.
All right.
Clifton, I know you got a question there. What's your Bruins talk?
Yeah, so I was just kind of looking, and you look at their defensive core, and you touched on it a little bit, but they have 6 guys now locked up for 3 years, and 3 guys locked up for 6 years, and then 2 guys locked up for 9 years. So I was just curious, as a Boston fan, it seems for this season and then the following 2 seasons, your core is pretty much what it's going to be on the back end, barring making a move or anything like that. And then really, the more question is, are you happy with the McAvoy, Carlo, and then Hampus Lindholm on your back end for the next 6 years as your big 3 kind of sort of? I was just curious on, with their defense being so locked up, how a Boston fan feels about that in the now for the run currently, and then as the future progresses and as those contracts move on and deeper into that.
Yeah, I think they're better now. Right now, I think they're better. They have the size from Lindholm, and like I said, they don't have to play like a Clifton so much and that sort of thing. I think you might see them move on from Riley or a Grzelcyk in the next year or 2, just to change that defensive core up some. I don't think all those guys will be on the team for the length of their deals. Carlo has had a difficult time. Some of it's been unlucky. Some of it's been a lack of confidence with him. And Bruins fans will always be upset with him because he's not as physical a player as his stature would tell you. So they get upset with him because he's not a rugged guy. He's not going to face wash you in front of the net. He's not going to do that type of thing. He's not Adam McQuaid. And one thing about Bruins fans, they love an Adam McQuaid more than a more talented Brandon Carlo. And that's just Boston. That's Bruins fans. That they would rather win the fight than win the game, some of them. So, and if you don't play that way, then that's a problem with them. And that's been Carlo's problem. He's a much better skater than you think. He doesn't give you much offensively, but I think he could jump in a little bit more. But I think he definitely plays better with Grzelcyk. I think it's a good pairing. And I think Lindholm and McAvoy will be a good pairing for a long time. And then that third pair, Forbort, he's okay. And, like a Josh Brown and that sort of thing. But I don't think all of them will be there. I think either Riley, and if I had to guess, it would be Riley first, maybe Grzelcyk in the next year or 2. maybe move on from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was kind of one of the questions that that I was going to ask. Out of Clifton, Zaboral when he's healthy, because obviously he's not going to be healthy for the rest of the season, Forbert and Riley, what do you see as the ideal third pairing for the Bruins now?
To me, the ideal third pairing is a pairing that's cost controlled and low money, because you're seeing a group that makes a lot of money now. I mean, you have Lindholm and McAvoy making 15, 16 together. You have Carlo making decent money, and Grzelcyk. And if everybody's making $3 million to $9 million, that's a lot of money on your back end. So you need a third pair that makes, I'd like to see Zaboral in there. That would be ideal, or a Mason Lowry in a couple of years. And if you have like a Zaboral Lowry, pair there, or if it's Michael Callahan or whoever it is, I don't know, whatever defenseman they come up with from their farm system, but they need some low cost defensemen in that third pair that are decent. They lose some with Juravec and Einen going, so they don't have that option. But if Zaboral can come back from the ACL injury, and you have a Mason Lowry in a couple of years, I think he'll probably spend one more year at Ohio State and then probably try to enter the league after that. Then that's ideal for me, because again, you're going to spend a lot of money on your decor if everybody's a veteran making $3 million plus.
Yeah. And I feel like Don Sweeney going out and getting Lindholm here was trying to address a mistake that he made in free agency. He inked Forbert and Riley to identical deals, 3 years, $3 million. So of course, now we have them for 2 more years at $3 million a piece. And one could argue that one or both don't even deserve to be in the Bruins defensive lineup at this point.
They both play the left side. So I think my view is I'd keep Forbort, and I really think they even probably dangled Riley at this deadline. I heard some indications that they may have, because they could put Forbort on the left and Brown/Clifton on the right and be okay in the playoffs. I think they are open to moving Riley, because I think that Riley was brought in as a puck mover, offensive defenseman when they really needed it. And now I'm not sure how much they really view that they need it as much. I think they need more size and heaviness, and I think they finally come to that realization. So Riley doesn't play that game. He's not a typical Bruins defenseman. He's more of a Western Conference kind of skate up and down the ice and play offense kind of guy. So I think they'll probably try to move on from Riley, I would assume. But you're right, having them both. There's been some knee-jerk reactions because of their poor drafting and their poor player development. So they've had to sign Nosek and Foligno and Holla. And, that's another thing. Their bottom 6 is not homegrown. It's not $1 million a year, guys. It's all like $3 million, $4 million. Like, you can't do that. You have to develop. Hopefully, like a Mark McLaughlin, who they just got from BC, can be that type of guy. They liken him to a Noah Lachari. They need guys who make $1 million or less in that bottom 6, so that, or even in the bottom pair defensively, because again, you have to balance out your salaries.
Yeah, eventually the years of Bergeron and Marchand and Pasternak taking, continual sweetheart deals, that'll fall off, and you're going to end up in cap pain, which the Bruins really haven't experienced to the degree that other teams have. So that's always kind of a curious thing for me personally. But it just seems like it's the defense right now that kind of needs to move money out. And they finally did with John Moore. Thank God. I was tired of talking about him as needing to go for the past few years.
Right.
But I think after moving past Charlie Coyle and his awful contract on a third line, I think now it turns to, are we going to move a Nick Foligno in the offseason potentially? Do you think that's somebody that the Bruins would look at offloading?
Yeah, I do. And my question is right now, Foligno looks like, David Backes 2.0. He looks like a guy that's just at the end of the line. And again, you didn't have young guys who could slot in there. Like Anton Bleed wasn't enough, and you traded a bunch of younger guys early on in their contracts. Ryan Donato, Frank Vetrano, Nola Chari moves on from the bottom six. I mean, you didn't have enough in there. Chris Wagner fell off the earth, so you had some guys who just didn't come through. You didn't develop bottom six guys. My whole thing with the Bruins is they don't seem to draft. I'm not sure what their purpose is in drafting. Like, they don't go out and try to draft like a real grinder. If that's the way they want to play, if that's the way the Bruins have always played, then why aren't you going out in the later rounds, 4th, 5th round, trying to get a guy who can really grind it out and forecheck, and you can really groom him to be that kind of guy if that's what you want in your bottom six? They really haven't done that. They drafted Charlie McAvoy, which was a home run. But then they had Trent Frederick later in that first round. Like, that's not a home run. That's a guy that's barely playing on your third line right now. So there's been a lot of drafting issues that have caused them to have to pay, and then they're lucky that they have Jeremy Swayman that can be under their control for a while and not make a lot of money. That's one thing that's good about Swayman and having him be the number one goalie coming forward. I would imagine they'd have to move on from Ullmark. Can't have a goalie sitting on the bench, at $5 million a year. So there's some moves that have to be made there. But I think, Foligno would definitely, is a guy to be moved, and Riley, and those two guys who make $3.5 million or so. So those are two guys that you can move on from. I think maybe even the offseason, if someone will take Foligno. That's the other thing. You might have to give him up for a 6th round pick or something. But it might be just a salary dump and let him go and see what you have there. But they don't really have anybody in the system right now. Fabian Lysell has been some great talk about him. Is he really ready next year? Jack Studnicka has not done much of anything. Is he, second line center is a real problem. Is Patrice Bergeron coming back? So there's a lot of questions in the offseason. Big offseason for the Bruins, especially after they potentially lose in the first round.
Yeah. Now, my last question before I kick it over to these guys to give you their final thoughts and questions. For the Bruins, if they have another trade in the weights here, what would be a trade that you would like to see?
Well, I'd like to see second line center. I said from the beginning that my guy that I really targeted was JT Miller. Like, I wanted them to get JT Miller, and if they had to give up a bunch of assets, that's the guy. Stick him at second line center for a while in between Hall and Pasternak. That's a guy I really like. I think he's an under the radar guy in the league. He performs. He's consistent. He would be a great Bruin. That's the guy I targeted early on. Didn't work out. But a second line center is a guy that they have to get. I mean, Bergeron may play another year or two. Who knows? People talking about David Krejci potentially coming back next year. Okay, maybe he comes back for one more year. But do the Bruins really want to do that? Do we want to just move on from that? Do we want to keep? We already tried it with Tuukka Rask. Like, the Bruins just going to continue to just squeeze the ever living, anything out of the last group, out of the last nucleus of people of teams and of the team. And I think it's time to move on. They need to make some real. Cam Neely said 3 years ago, I think it was, you have to make some real hard decisions after they lost the cup. Real hard decisions about the roster. Well, they really haven't done that. They've been toeing the line. And it comes to a point now where they really have to make some decisions. And you have David Pastrnak coming up, who took a hometown discount, and he's not taking another one. So that's a guy who's making $9 million, $10 million, who knows, a year. So that's another big contract coming down the pipe.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, Clifton, I know you've got some questions. Take it away.
So I guess I just have more questions for the future as you're kind of jumping into it, and just a few quick ones is you did mention potentially moving an Allmark. I was just curious if you felt maybe Boston would have to give up something just to move that contract out, and then also I was more curious to see. You mentioned the Jake DeBrusk contract a little bit. I was curious if you felt that was just a contract to kind of help with the moving him out aspect. And then if you do think he's still going to be moved out, I was curious at like kind of the value that you think you could get back for Jake DeBrusk now that he has a $4 million contract with him.
Yeah, well, I here's what I think probably happened is that Sweeney was thinking it may not happen, so he said to Jake, let's try to make a deal. Made a deal that was appealing to teams, but also appealing to the Bruins if it didn't work out. So they hit the sweet spot, and then probably said, okay, if it doesn't work out, you can have a great end of the year, great postseason, and increase your value, and we'll send you out in the off season. I think it's still going to happen. I think they're still going to let him go in the off season, but they're really hoping to God that he has a really good postseason, stands out and increases his value, and then they can move him on a deal that's $4 million a year is not a ton. So a guy who has postseason success. He's had some in the past. He's been a 27 goal scorer. He's still young. Has really good skill as we've seen in flashes, and you could probably get a decent amount if he has a good postseason. But you're going to have to dump some salary. The Foligno, maybe Nosek. There are some guys there who have another year left. You mentioned the defense. There's a lot more term on the defense, but there's a lot of one more year guys on there on the forward group. And one of them is Pasternak, that will command big money. And then you have Bergeron and his status. So you could potentially be without top two centers next season if Bergeron says I'm done. So that's a scary proposition too. So I think they're in the market for a center and a really good one in the offseason. And I think they're hoping to God that DeBrusque can be part of that package.
Just one last question. You brought up the Pasternak and how his deal runs up. I was just curious, and you said you don't expect him to take a team-friendly deal again. I was just curious what you think that's going to come in at for, I'm assuming, going to be 8 years you would expect. And what do you think the AAV would be?
Yeah, I think 8 years. I think they'll try it like 8 years, eight and a half. And I think if I'm David Pasternak, I'm thinking, 8 years, nine and a half. He's one of the top goal scorers in the league, and I know Mitch Marner's inflated at 11 million or 100 million or whatever he's making, but that was a ridiculous deal. But so that's inflated. But I think 9 is not out of the realm of possibility. 8 years, 9 million. You have Charlie at 8, 9 something, and you have Lindholm at 8 years, 6.5, and so it's I think he takes. I think Charlie McAvoy really didn't take a hometown discount when other guys were. Marchand, Pasternak, even Bergeron has taken less in the past. McAvoy didn't do that. He got paid pretty much top dollar. And I think if I'm David Pasternak, I say the same thing. I get paid pretty much top dollar. And I think that's probably, if I had to guess, I think that's 8 years and at minimum 8.5.
No wild chance they don't re-sign him. I don't think there is.
I don't think they can. And I've thought of that. I think there's still a chance they don't, but they really can't lose him. I mean, they've lost Chara, Rask, Krug. They could, Krejci. They could potentially losing Bergeron. They lost a lot of the core, a lot of the stars that the fans love. Fans love Pasternak. I don't think they can move on from him. I really don't. If they did, it would be a blockbuster deal for many pieces, but you'd really have to sell it to the fans. And there's a contingent of fans who don't love him because he's not a great defensive player and this and that and all that. And there are times when he can kind of disappear it a little bit. But as you've seen since January 1st, he goes on these incredible streaks, incredible goal scorer. Not like any that the Bruins have seen on the team since Neely, really. I mean, he's a guy that scores tons of goals, and he's young. And I think you have to keep that guy just because you've lost so many stars off the team, and you will continue to do so. So I think Pasternak's the guy. Pasternak and McAvoy, in my opinion, if I'm Don Sweeney, those are the two guys I'm riding with for the next 8 years.
Absolutely. Any other final questions for Matt here before we sail off into the last commercial break?
I'll say this. What happened on, was it Saturday with the Lindholm signing?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people loved it and thought it was great. And then they re-signed him. And some people didn't love the term, but they still thought it was a great deal. And it is a great deal. If you don't like the deal, you don't like Don Sweeney and you just have an extra grind. And a lot of Bruins fans will not step off their narratives and will not give in. But that was a great deal. Now that you haven't improved yourself enough beyond him to get past those other teams, you really have to question whether or not you should have said, you know what, we're not going to do this and we're going to explore Lindholm in the offseason. You really have to question it now because, obviously you need Lindholm, but you could have just signed him in the offseason as a UFA and gone hard after him. So now it's sort of disappointing. Now we'll see in the queue, 33 trades. Hopefully one of those is the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, we can definitely hope so. But I do want to thank you, Matt, for coming on and joining us here. I'll give you a couple moments before we take off to the commercial. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where to find you guys and your content?
Absolutely. Bruins Benders podcast. You can find us on social media at Bruins Benders. We have a YouTube channel where we have a couple of interviews, one with Mike Milbury, one with Arda Ocal from ESPN on there. We drop episodes every Tuesday or Wednesday night, depending on when the last Bruins game is there. This new one, the trade deadline one, will be dropped tomorrow, and we'll talk Bruins trade and all sorts of things. So that's on anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more. And we have tons of fun with it, and we hope that you'll follow and give us a listen.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it, Matt. And of course, appreciate everybody joining the stream and following along. We're going to take a quick 5 to 10 minute commercial break here, and we'll be back with the final guest in the final segment as we take it down in the final hour.
Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. We are excited to announce as part of our show, the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. Our live coverage will be right back. Our live coverage will be right back. A quick word from our show sponsor and friends of Inside the Rink, BetUS. BetUS has your NHL, NBA, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year of live betting. Sign up for BETUS.com with promo code RINK for a 125% sign-up bonus. Again, use promo code RINK for your 125% sign-up bonus. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS.com. Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. We are excited to announce as part of our show, the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. Our live coverage will be right back. Our live coverage will be right back. A quick word from our show sponsor and friends of Inside the Rink, BetUS. BetUS has your NHL, NBA, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year of live betting. Sign up for BETUS.com with promo code RINK for a 125% sign-up bonus. Again, use promo code RINK for your 125% sign-up bonus. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS.com. Thank you for watching our 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show. We are excited to announce, as part of our show, the launch of our official mobile applications for the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can download them now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by searching Inside the Rink. Our live coverage will be right back. Our live coverage will be right back. A quick word from our show sponsor and friends of Inside the Rink, BetUS. BetUS has your NHL, NBA, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year of live betting. Sign up for betus.com with promo code RINK for a 125% sign-up bonus. Again, use promo code RINK for your 125% sign-up bonus. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS. Welcome to the 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live show, presented by Inside the Rink. We are excited to be joining you live today from all over the U.S. and Canada. Now, here's your host, Connor Green.
Welcome back. It is the final countdown. We have one more hour remaining. Trades are still trickling through. Supposedly over 30 trades still in the hopper, ready to be completed. It's going to be a wild ride. Who knows if they all get completed by the end of the show, but we will keep you posted, and anything that happens afterwards, we'll get articles on it. Now, the final hour here, we're going to bring on our podcast network manager and the host of Cue the Duck Boats podcast, my good friend and coworker, Jacob Abernathy. Welcome, Jake.
What's up, guys? I'm so miserable right now. I was planning on coming and being all happy and be like, hey, the Bruins just got all these players, but didn't go that way.
Yes. Unfortunately, while we're in the commercial break there, Don Sweeney has come out in the press conference and said that he is done. There are no more trades for the Bruins coming down the pipeline, and that there was nothing available that could make them better. And one of the things that he believed in making this team better would be players getting healthy. So, Jake, the first hot question, because I know you're upset. Why are you upset, and what were you expecting or hoping to see from Don Sweeney off the rip today?
So I wanted to see them get some forward depth. I wanted them not even less depth. I wanted them to see, I can't even talk. I wanted to see them go and get a forward that was going to make an impact on this roster. I wanted to see a second line center or a first line right wing. I wanted to see Jake DeBrusk's trade request honored. So my biggest thing, right, is someone who's always liked Jake DeBrusk, and I still like Jake DeBrusk. What kind of message does this send to players around the league if the Boston Bruins won't honor your wishes? That's not good. That's not something you want your team to be known for. And it would be great, right? DeBrusk re-signed. He's playing on the first line. He wants to be there now, but that's not the case. He still openly does not want to be there. So I wanted anything but what we got today. It's that, we got Josh Brown. What do you want? What do you want me to say? Yeah, I'm so happy. But to play devil's advocate, if the Bruins didn't get Lindholm on Saturday and they got Lindholm within the last 10 minutes of today, probably would be in a much better mood. So I realize that, just being realistic. But how do you feel about it?
Well, I want to take a minute because you brought something up interesting that I think all four of us here can kind of understand and have, an opinion on. The Boston Bruins not fulfilling his trade request. Now, I'm going to go around to each of you, but do you think that impacts players wanting to go to an organization? in a negative way, or do you think that this helps an organization with players not trying to force their way out, at the whim of not being happy with the organization? Clifton, I'm going to go to you first because I think this could impact you more than anybody as the rebuild goes on here. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's interesting with the fact that he got a contract extension. So it makes me think he's almost kind of willing to stay a little bit. But if he's truly not willing to stay and that was just a ploy to move out and that's why he signed it, and they played him kind of like, you sign this, more value, and then we're moving you out, and then you don't move him out, I do think that players will see that and might not sign there. Chicago kind of had a similar scenario with Marc-Andre Fleury, and we respected everything he wanted and essentially moved him. The Flyers respected Claude Giroux. I know it's not the same type of thing, but I think ultimately if you don't really respect players' wishes, that's going to be known around the league, and it can affect somebody coming and signing there. If you're a tie with some other team, that might be the tiebreaker.
Yeah. Now, Garth, go around the wheel here.
Yeah, I don't think it really impacts anything for bringing in players. I think this kind of comes down to like coaching and deployment more so, because like management wise, like they're going to pay you your money, you're going to get your money. But playing wise, I think is more so the issue with DeBrusk. I do think with the contract extension, I think there's kind of maybe like some read between the lines saying like, okay, I've agreed to this, and like you guys are going to find me my right fit in the summer. Right, because it's kind of a friendly. Teams can plan in the summer more so for $4 million for a couple of seasons, and versus at a deadline, it's kind of a rushed thing. It was literally just signed a few hours ago. So that is a tough thing. Yeah, so that's a tough thing to fit in right away when you're trying to balance a bunch of other moves as a buyer, or even like a rebuilding team as well. Because that could have been a move for DeBrusk as well. Because I mean, with his age. But I don't think the Bruins should be too worried about bringing guys in. Like, I don't think it's a negative thing, but also maybe something to watch out for Bruce Cassidy in the future. I don't think there's really been any other player that's had an issue with him. I think it's only really been DeBrusk, but I could be wrong.
David Backes.
Well, I mean, David Backes.
Yeah, Backes hates him.
I mean, the corpse of David Backes at that point.
Yeah, so. No, it was not the living, breathing David Backes, but yeah.
Yeah. And one quick thing before Jake kind of chimes in, I think the unique thing about the Bruins and their trade requests from DeBrusk and Senyshyn is these are both players that the Bruins drafted and brought up in their own pipeline. And they did 50% of their heavy lifting today by moving Senyshyn to Ottawa in the Brown deal. I also got a text message a few minutes ago that said
St. Louis was really in on him.
No, that is an ice cold take there. But the Bruins were actually one of the finalists in the Ricard Raquel deal, and that's where DeBrusk was going to go. And then the Penguins kind of got cold feet with some of the other dealings they were moving in on, and they really stepped up with putting 2 young roster players out there for Anaheim to help build around, and just kind of, swooped him up from under the Bruins. I think that was intended to be the next trade down the pipeline before old Ronnie Hextall in Pittsburgh there ruined it for us. But Jake, aside from Jake DeBrusk, I want to go to the Senyshyn deal.
Yep.
What are your thoughts so far on getting kind of the big-bodied defenseman out of Ottawa?
I'm all right with it. I think down the stretch and in the playoffs, he's going to be helpful. He's a guy who can fight. He's a guy who plays physical, a guy you don't want to go in the corners against. Guess what? Bruins don't really have that. We go after big guys. We get Derek Forbert, not physical whatsoever. Only physical once every 3 games. Probably comes in with a little bee under his bonnet. But really, I mean, I think he'll help us down the stretch. I don't hate it. I always hoped that like something would break through and Zach Senyshyn would become a good player for the Bruins, as we all do, right? When we have a first-round pick that doesn't pan out and hasn't really gotten a real chance. I think out of all the players from that 2015 draft that were angry about things with the Bruins, Senyshyn had the biggest axe to grind. He really never got a true chance in Boston. And when he did play, he either played okay or got hurt. So like it was an overall tough situation. But I wish nothing but the best for him. And I really don't have a problem with Josh Brown either. I think he could help the Bruins. I was hoping we did more. But I just read something that'll pique your interest, Connor. So I'm going to give it to you right now. Sweeney just said that Fabian Lysell could join either club at the end of the year. His exact quote was, "He could join either club to tell you the honest truth. From a skill standpoint, talent standpoint, Fabian has a lot of things we're excited about." I thought you were wrong, so I'm gonna. Yeah,
Thank you.
you had it. You told me this 2 weeks ago when we argued, I think, in a group chat. So
Yeah, so my take on it back then, and of course, talking to certain people around the Bruins organization, this has kind of been on their radar since about halfway through the season in the WHL. Lysell has the skill and the pedigree to be a David Pastrnak 2.0. I'm not saying that he is going to excel like David Pastrnak, but the skill set is the same. And he is, honestly, for the people that haven't seen any of his games or his highlights, he is blowing the doors off of the competition when he's scoring goals. He's got speed. He can shoot. The finish is there. So,
I mean, his coach in junior said that the only player he's seen that skates better than him in his whole life was Pavel Bure, and then he also mentioned McDavid. So yeah. I'm not saying he's going to be anywhere near the level of either of those guys, but the physical attributes are there. He is a top-end talent. I mean, he's a guy that I had going in the top 10 in the draft. Obviously, the character issues are what pushed him down. Boston usually handles character issues pretty well. So I think that hopefully those never come up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of is weird to me as well. I don't think that Lysell is going to be someone who is in the playoffs on your lineup. I think he will probably come in and he'll play, some late March and early April games for the Bruins as they start to, give people some maintenance days to really get a good look at him. And then he'll go down to the AHL. And next year will be his coming out party. I think after camp, you'll see him get a shot in the top two lines, the top six, because I do think that Jake DeBrusk will get moved this coming off season, especially now that he put his foot forward with an extension. Agreed. So that we will see on. I'm going to read a quick one here to kind of do some housekeeping on Andrew Kopp to the New York Rangers. Darren Dreger is reporting that the conditions are a conditional second-round pick that could turn into a first-rounder for winning 2 rounds of the playoffs, and Kopp plays 50% of the playoffs game, and another second that can be Winnipeg option for either 2022 or 2023. So it sounds like they're getting at minimum 2 second-round picks, could turn into a first and a second if they are to go far enough there. Some other quick business from Lou on the island is that they have signed Cal Clutterbuck to a 2-year contract extension, and Zach Parise inked for another year. And the Clutterbuck terms is a 175 AAV. So that's pretty cheap depth for that fourth line that Lou loves down on the island. Going over those couple quick things in the Metro, what does that pop up in your mind, Clifton?
It's interesting for sure because they've struggled this year. They're both older players. I guess they like it there. It doesn't do much for me. I guess I like Clutterbuck. He's the perfect fourth line player, but it doesn't do much for me. It's interesting, I guess, because I don't really see a direction there. Do they think they're going to respond next year? I don't really know. It's okay, I guess. It doesn't do much. It's just
a conundrum.
Yeah, just what it is.
It's like I used to be worried about the Islanders a year ago, and now I'm not. Like 1 year went by, and it's like, just not working out there anymore. I don't know.
To me, big changes need to be made there for them to kind of come back to being relevant.
Yeah, and I mean,
like a time machine.
We in our Inside the Rink group chat the other day were talking about the Islanders, and I mentioned that I said they weren't going to make the playoffs and they were going to be garbage this year, and I took some heat for that before the season and in this group chat of, oh my God, they're not that bad, blah blah blah. Well, it's true. They're not going to be making the playoffs. They're really not a good team by any stretch of the means. They have, I think, close to 11 players over the age of 30, and you just re-signed more that are over 30. It seems like you're going in the opposite direction. And at some point, Lou is going to leave them in an awful spot, just like he did with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And if anybody has an argument for me, my Twitter handle is right here. We can have this New York Islanders chat because I am so anti-Islanders being good, it's not even funny.
I think your Twitter's going to see crickets after that one. I don't think you're going to get much of an argument.
I hope not, but we have an Islanders writer on the team, Donnie, and he was...
Is that his name? Ilya Sorokin, whatever? That's him? His name's Donnie.
Huh. Yep.
Solid. I should probably know that, but...
He was kind of coming at me like I was smoking something funny, but definitely wasn't. And definitely Islanders are not making the playoffs. They have some good pieces on that team. You know, I won't say that they're completely awful. They have a great top pair defensive depth there. And then, of course, you know, Matt Barzal, the only forward that I would say is worth anything on that Islanders lineup in the long run. I don't know.
Oliver Wahlstrom's worth something.
Do either of you foresee an issue after next season when his contract's up?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you're going to get John Tavares 2.0. But I think that
Yep.
if Lou wants to keep his job, he will sell the farm to put pieces around him to sign him to a $15 million a year contract to try and keep him, or you have to jump on it and just trade him and try to get as much as you possibly can. Because let's be honest, the John Tavares scenario is what's crippling the Islanders right now. You know, if you put John Tavares on this team, we're probably having a completely different conversation because that's a significant player in your top six. But even if you had moved on from him and moved him for, I don't know, let's say 3 first-round assets, how many years ago was that? 2 to 3 years ago now? Those pieces would probably be in your lineup at this point or about to crack the lineup. So, I mean...
That's where the biggest mistake is. It's the fact that Tavares wasn't traded. But, I mean, there's 100 different takes on that. Was that Tavares' fault? Was it their fault? I don't know. Who knows? Like, he didn't tell them what he was going to do. They obviously thought he was going to re-sign there. They didn't think he was going to go put on the PJs and go to Toronto. Like, that's the way it went.
Yeah.
Is he worth the money anyway?
I see. Like, I don't think Tavares is that great. He has 22 points in 61 games. Like, oh, I'm looking at the wrong person. Completely looking at the wrong person's stats. That's so funny. I said that. Oh shit. I mean, he has 58 points in 61 games, which is great. He's a point per game player, but he makes way too much money.
Are you saying Tavares is not that great?
Yeah, I don't.
Saying Barzal.
I'm saying Tavares is not that great. I'm not the biggest Tavares guy. I'm really not. I think Barzal is that great, but I mean, I used to think Tavares was that great too. He's just getting older, and he's less explosive.
And he's not playing with consistent first-line talent every night.
No.
Which, you know, that always helps. But, I mean, you're definitely not going to be
He was always going to be the number 2 center in Toronto. Like,
yeah, there's really no avoiding that. You're not going to be slotted in front of Austin Matthews unless your name is Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get in the hopper here and look for some other trades that have come down.
Bertuzzi staying. I saw that, Garth.
Bertuzzi staying put. Yeah, it looks like the Tampa Bay Lightning have made another acquisition. They've brought Riley Nash back to Tampa Bay from Arizona for future considerations.
Stanley Cup's back on.
Yeah, I heard that future considerations kid's pretty good too. So
yeah, thank you for your service, future considerations.
That's right.
I mean,
have you guys said that Arizona's a joke at all today, or you guys
nope, not yet. Haven't gotten that far.
Want to do it now?
That was the first.
I mean, we can talk about Arizona being a joke for the fact that they didn't trade Phil Kessel or Jacob Pittman today.
Team's trying to rebuild, right? They're trying to rebuild. They're going to go play in a college. They're the biggest joke in the NHL, and they're just not selling. They're just not selling. They're like, yeah, we'll take all your contracts. We're not going to sell our veterans. We don't need anything in return. Like, I could never understand it. I really don't. And like, I like Bill Armstrong. I do. That's like the hardest part in all this. But like the moves the decisions that Arizona makes as a whole, from top to bottom, it's just asinine.
Yeah,
Glad I could get that out of my chest.
I mean, shoot. I guess the only thing that you could try to hang on as Arizona is you won the Jack McBain sweepstakes, and McBain looks like he could be a pretty legit player. Hey, it's a nice cat.
Yes.
Speak to it on the stream.
My dog's just been staring at me through the glass door.
And they at least have 5 picks in the first 2 rounds in this draft.
Yeah, and they got another.
They're gonna draft like 5 kids with charges or something. Don't worry.
They got another NCAA player in the trade with the Jets too, who's supposedly going to be a decent NHL player.
Sick. It's because they don't want to leave college campus. They just get to stay at a college.
Exactly. I mean, wouldn't you?
No. If I had to choose where I wanted to play in the NHL, like honestly, from like a nightlife and from a life perspective, be Toronto probably. In all honesty.
Maybe, yeah. I mean,
like if you're looking not at the media, you're looking just at like nightlife in the area, and like Toronto's awesome. I don't know. Have you guys ever been to Toronto?
I have.
Yeah, Toronto's awesome. Great city.
All right, and to do
I know it wouldn't be Detroit.
Whoa.
Whoa! You can ride the people mover.
Yeah.
So some quick final housekeeping on the New York Rangers Andrew Kopp deal. Andrew Kopp and a 6th-round pick in 23 goes to New York. And on top of the 2 second-round picks that we've already discussed, there's a 5th-round pick in 2023 and prospect Morgan Barron going the opposite way. So this turned out to be a huge package going back to Winnipeg here. So 2 second-round picks. One of them could turn into a 1st, a 5th, and a prospect. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, Garth, you were seeing that Bertuzzi looks like he's staying put in Detroit. Have you heard anything else on any other names? Have you seen any other things coming out of Detroit?
All I know is they have not confirmed they're done yet. But Max Boltman from The Athletic reported that Bertuzzi not going anywhere. He made it pretty clear in his press conference yesterday that he did not say he wanted to leave. So interesting. Obviously it's some conflicting reports, but yeah, it'll be interesting what the decision is comes this summer of how to move forward with the core. That's my biggest question.
Fair. Now, because I did see the press conference where he came out and said, no, I'm not requesting a trade. I don't want to go somewhere else. But I had personally heard that Steve Yzerman was open on the market. Everybody but Raymond Insider is available. And Bertuzzi had, went back to Yzerman and said, hey, I'm not requesting a trade. I don't want to necessarily definitely be moved. But if the options are available for me to move elsewhere, I would be open to it. So that kind of makes me think that he doesn't want the bad press necessarily of people thinking that he wants out of Detroit, and he doesn't want to be viewed as more of a problem child player, especially because of his, non-vaccinated status. So it kind of just seems like a lot of lip service. I still think that this could end up being somebody moved at the end of the year or definitely within the next 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to call Bertuzzi a problem child because he's been a point per game player. He's been one of Detroit's most consistent players, like off the ice, on the ice. He's really has good relationships with Dylan Larkin, and he's really taken Lucas Raymond under his wing. So he's been that perfect teammate. I don't know what the relationship's like outside of that with Steve Yzerman. I know there was reports saying that the rumor was that Eisman really was not happy with his decision at the beginning of the year. And there obviously trade rumors were circling in the summer. So I'm just curious, with Dylan Larkin and Bertuzzi's age and then Seider and Raymond's age, which core are we looking to build around? Are we looking to push this summer to be more of a competitive, maybe squeak into the playoffs, or push it off another couple of years? Which, I mean, when you're going to look another couple of years down in the future, Bertuzzi's a really easy piece to move to get pieces to help you towards that goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll touch on that. I mean, so like I was just gonna say to you before you said that, like the Detroit to me is one of the most interesting teams because there's actually a lot of talent there. Like people think Detroit's not good, but they're right on the cusp of being a team that can contend in that bottom half of the playoffs. They really are. So it's like, what do they want to do? And like, I don't know. I think Yzerman has to be starting to make the switch where he's ready to make a push because you have all the pieces to build around. You have an older core, you have a younger core. If they can get those middle pieces that kind of flux it all together, I don't know. Like I think Detroit could be a team pretty soon. They have young stars. They have some older stars. Like they're there. It's just a couple pieces away.
Yeah. Another hole to fill, probably a left D this year, would be Simon Edvinsson coming in next year. He right now is on pace for U19 scoring in the SHL. I think only Victor Hedman had better point per game than
they have
Edvinsson.
Wallander too coming, right? Is that his name?
Yeah,
Wallander.
They're tied, but Wallander was 2022nd. He's also very good.
Yeah.
Eisman has this bill of drafting 6'4+ defensemen who can skate very well.
They have a great prospect pool too. So as a Red Wings fan, I'd be pretty happy with the direction things are starting to go in. What, Connor? What dude? They have fucking 2 blue blood defensemen. We think we have a good prospect pool with Mason Lowry and Lizelle. Like, what are we talking about? Don't say
what
anything
I was going to say, and it's not negative at all, is Steve Yzerman is probably the best drafting general manager in the entire National Hockey League. It seems like everything that he does and touches when it comes to drafting is just like chef's kiss, Like, I remember sitting there and watching the entry draft when they picked Seider 6th, and you could hear the audible gasp from myself and everybody that was on that TV panel, and everybody was like, what just happened? And now look at us. He's probably the favorite for the Calder Trophy. Steve Yzerman is consistently making other general managers look like idiots when it comes to drafting, to the point where people make jokes where they say, hey, we're going to trade this piece to the Detroit Red Wings for drafting tips from Steve Yzerman. I mean, even just like if you look at Boston versus Detroit, right? Boston is a team who consistently tries to outsmart other teams and are picking, off the board for this quote unquote, like perfect draft pick that's going to fit into their system. And then what do we end up getting? We end up getting Urho Vakanainen. All things said, Urho, I'm going to miss you. You have
actually played pretty well.
Sentimental value to me. I actually went to that draft in Chicago when he was picked. So that kind of gives me a little sad note, but Vakanainen, Zaboral, Trent Frederick.
Trent Frederick's starting to come into his own, but he probably could have been had in the second round. It's
not a top 6 forward. It's not a top 4 defenseman, and you picked them in the first round.
I agree.
As at best, third line center or forward. That's. I mean, I know that the Bruins haven't been drafting in the top 15 picks often, so I can understand that, but at the same token, you had Tampa Bay, who was picking in the bottom half of the draft for how long? And they have prospects coming up consistently every year who they can plug and play and will produce. It's whatever Stevie Y is drinking or doing. Maybe, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk found this alien and brought him to Earth to draft pick. I don't know, but whatever he's doing, it's insane.
That is a theory. That's the second tinfoil hat theory Connor's had today. So
I'm not surprised.
It's been a long day on top of a very long night last night.
You guys have been at this for a while. I just kept
Yeah.
popping in and out at work, and I was like, oh my God, they're still going. Still going.
oh yeah.
Well, I mean, we're coming down on probably the last 20 minutes or so.
And like none of your teams did anything great either. That's the best part. It's like
Mine was active just before we were on here.
I mean, I'm pretty happy with the Nick Leddy deal. Every St. Louis fan is like upset about giving up Jake Leddy, which I'm kind of surprised about. I've never really heard of, but he's got positive analytics for a depth role. So I'm curious to see what he can do in a little bit more of a bigger role.
Yeah.
But also second round pick for Nick Leddy I'm pretty pumped about.
Yeah. No, especially because Yzerman will use it well.
Yes. And it kind of goes back into our conversation earlier about what Yzerman will do in the future. I mean, last summer he gave up a third for Alex Nedeljkovic. He gave up a second for Nick Leddy. So he's not afraid to spend futures to make impacts for middle of the lineup guys. I mean, I think Alex Nedeljkovic could be more. He's had a rough stretch recently, but most of the season he was around 915, which is where you want to be as a starting goalie.
Yeah.
What do you think they do with their forward core? I mean, for the most part, they're all UFAs and they're all only locked up for next season. And then after that, your books are, for the most part, open. I was just curious on the direction you saw them going.
I think Larkin, as soon as July 1st hits, he's going to sign an 8-year extension. He's been the heart and soul of the team, local boy. I don't think he's going anywhere. Yzerman, since taking over, he's been preaching flexibility. The longest contract he gave out was Anthony Mantha, which was a 4-year deal, and he traded it that next deadline. So I don't think – I'm curious what they'll do to fill out other UFAs on the roster right now. I don't see that many coming back. Maybe Mark Stahl is like a veteran D. Believe it or not, he's actually been a solid number 6 option. Yeah, I like the direction with signing guys to a 3-year term and letting them prove themselves. And ultimately, if it doesn't go well, it's easier to get rid of. I'm curious though if this summer, like a guy like Vincent Trocheck who has ties to Detroit, like maybe that's an option to fill in for a second line center role. Taking a flyer on Sean Monahan, taking a piece back from Calgary because we have the cap space and he's proven. Those would be some moves that, like, if we're looking to compete quicker, I could see happening. But also, like, I don't think that Yzerman's going to stand pat and just slowly let prospects, slowly develop. I think he's going to have to start taking some moves one way or the other, either being selling or start spending some of those futures.
Yeah, I think it's time. I think he will too. Like, I think he's going to start to like both those names. I mean, I don't know if Trocheck would want to go, but I didn't know he was local. So like, if he did, I mean,
he's from Pittsburgh, but he played AAA in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, like if you were to go and get Trocheck and Monahan shows that he can be the player that he was literally like 2 years ago, then I mean that would quickly turn things around. That is those middle guys. You know what I mean? That would be that.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're going to be huge. Like Trocheck's a good player, but
they're both good players.
Monahan's playing 4th line center, I think, for Calgary. And, like that'd be a very we'd be getting assets back to take on, which would kind of fit into the Mark Stahl deal as well, getting a 2nd round pick in return. I'm not crazy about that one, but I could see it making sense.
Yeah, no, I could.
But yeah, ultimately, like maybe some offer sheet. That one's so hard to predict. I'm not even going to throw a name in that, but that could be an option too. But yeah, you're gonna have to commit one way or the other moving forward. You can't keep hoping little by little and signing maybe like a 26-year-old that's could play 3rd line wing at some point. You want to start making some bigger swings.
Now you brought up an interesting name with Sean Monahan. He, of course, has been kind of in the rumor mill all season long as somebody that Calgary was potentially willing to move on from. He's kind of slid a little bit in their lineup and kind of
a lot of it.
Well, yeah, but more so the falling out of favor with management themselves. But it didn't make sense to me to move on from him when they're loading up the way they did to go on a run. He could turn it around at any time and go back to being your 1st line center. But do you really think they would give assets away with a Sean Monahan to move away from his cap hit if needed?
I think so. Like I think
fourth line.
Yeah, like he's playing fourth line. Your value is not too high at this point, and I think they still want to keep on the gas. I'm not saying it's gonna be a huge asset they're gonna give up, considering past, was it 2018-19? He had like 60-some points or something like that.
Yeah, like that's what I just like popped. So he had
I know,
82
yeah.
points in
It wouldn't be
2018.
a huge asset, but they're not gonna get anything returned. I'm saying it'd be either a wash or they're giving up something.
If you look at their books, they got both Kachuk and Johnny Gaudreau to sign in the offseason. That would not be surprising to see him move immediately once the season's over, like at the draft, just to get his numbers off the books. They got a lot of money. Their whole bottom core has got to be signed. They got like 4 or 5 UFAs at the bottom half of their lineup just on the forward core. And defensively, they have 4 guys they need to sign. I'm going to imagine that's got to be a deal they look to do in the offseason, especially if he's going to play fourth line minutes.
Yeah, I mean, the Matthew Tkachuk contract is probably going to cripple that organization. Like, the adding that they did this deadline
was to go for it now.
Makes me think of the final year of Artemi Panarin in Columbus when they loaded up to try and take a swing. You're going to spend all these assets and you're going to take a big swing at it. You're going to have a ton of UFAs at the end of the year that you can't re-sign, and people are just going to walk. And then where does that leave you? Now you have a bunch of, assets moved out and nothing to show for it.
What do you think Johnny Gaudreau and Kachuk both pull in as far as AAV?
I don't know if Gaudreau even stays. I think Calgary is in a place where like their stars, the problem is they're Americans, and like they're both like I just don't see either of them being that loyal to Calgary. So I think either of them would stay if the bag is just handed over, but I think if it's not, and they have to be smart, I think there's a chance you see them walk. I mean, the Tkachuk family has no problem with a holdout. We know that. So like they're gonna hold out for their money, and I could see Johnny literally wanting to go play with Kevin Hayes. So like it's just not like, I mean, it's a reality in that situation for them, and they have to know that. So I feel like that's another one of the reasons they're pushing so hard right now to try to like make that team be a desirable place for them and make it somewhere where they can go try to make a run right now.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And that kind of goes back to the Sean Monahan thing. Like, you shed Sean Monahan, you have that much more money to work with this summer.
Yeah.
To sign both those guys.
Yeah, because if you don't pay Gaudreau, he's gone. Like, I don't think there's any chance he's like, I'm staying here. I think Johnny Gaudreau would like. I think you could see Gaudreau go play in Philly, go play for the Rangers, go play for. I mean, I think Gaudreau would probably play in Chicago. I think he would. Just,
you think he's got to get 9.5, right?
Yeah,
he's the season this year.
Yeah,
he's a hard candidate, honestly.
In the 8 range.
No, he's gonna get $9 million, dude.
Yeah, I agree.
You think open market free agency, he doesn't get that extra little boost there? He's gonna have point per game right now.
You want to go to
he'll go to LA. He'll go any big city. Like I'm telling you.
Ooh, I like LA.
Yeah, like he would be great in LA right away.
Does he want to go to a team that's going to win though, or does he not care?
I don't know how much Johnny Gaudreau gives a shit. I think he wants to drink beers and
if he wants to win. Wouldn't him and Kachuk work out team-friendly deals?
Yeah, we'll find out exactly. If they want to win, they'll stay together.
He's not going to go to, just any Joe Schmo team for $9 million. He's going to go to a team who's not going to be great for that much money. He's going to have to take somewhat of a value contract to be able to go to a team that's a competitor. But the cap hasn't gone up in 3 years now. And everybody and their mother in this league who's competing is strapped for cap space over and over and over again. There's no relief of, at least, we're going to get 3 to 4 million this year in a cap bump. Not.
Yeah, but he's Johnny Hockey. Like there's
I got a super interesting team for you guys. New Jersey's got a lot of cap space in the offseason, and they're on the upswing. Couldn't Johnny Gaudreau maybe want to go play Jack Hughes, go home?
That's where he's from, right?
Yep.
I mean, imagine they have. I mean, yeah.
They got like $20 million in the offseason, and for the most part, I mean, they got a few RFAs, but nothing too insane.
Yeah, PK's gone this year, right?
Yeah, that's $9 million right there.
Yep. Oh, Connor, $9 million.
Hey,
Wow, fits perfectly.
But still, like I said, he can get that $9 million there, but he's not going to win. New Jersey is nowhere close to winning.
I mean,
New Jersey still has some holes.
They have holes. They have holes, but
their goaltending's subpar. Their defensive core outside of Dougie Hamilton is really nothing to write home about. They have maybe a half dozen decent forwards, maybe 2 to 3 elite forwards, if that.
I'd go 2. They have Bratt and they have Hughes. I would only say they're the 2 elite forwards.
Nico Hischier?
I don't think he's elite.
And they have to sign Bratt too after the season, RFA.
Yeah, I mean,
I watch 0 of their games. Like 0 of their games. It's so
New Jersey seems to
I don't ever watch them.
They seem to be like a new Buffalo Sabres right now. Like they're getting younger picks and prospects, but it's not going anywhere. Like you're not seeing visible improvement in this team because every time they take a step up, they lose players to trades and free agency and they go right back to where they were. I'm not seeing any steps forward.
Did I just hear Jack Hughes is going to pull an Eichel out of your mouth? Is that what you're trying to get at?
I was thinking the exact same thing. Jack Hughes to Vegas?
I mean, I can't say that. Didn't they draft his brother?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So
they're going to be in Jersey.
Yeah, I mean,
Quinn Hughes.
Quinn Hughes to New Jersey trade rumors, right? But
if those 3 were going anywhere to all play together, I think it would actually be Detroit.
Yeah, local guys. Well, sort of.
They live there in the summer, though.
They live there in the summer, but I think which ones? There's a couple of them are born in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, but still, like Quinn and Luke both played for Michigan, so.
Yep, exactly. And Jack was committed, but he never played.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so. I have one question before like we get close to wrapping up. I know you have something, but it's for Clifton. How do you feel right now, like mentally, like knowing that this is like the end of like Kane and Taves and everything like that? I just because we're gonna be there soon as Bruins fans. Like when we have to say like an obvious bye to Bergeron and things like that. Like how is it terrible?
I don't think it's the end of Patrick Kane, to be honest. I think from everything reporting is he's leaning towards re-signing in the offseason. The Brandon Hagel thing could have changed how he feels. His statement seemed like he stood pat. His agent came out immediately and said he won't be traded in this one. Jonathan Toews, on the other hand, I do think is coming to an end. I think he's not happy with the rebuild. I think he was pretty vocal that he thought a guy like Brandon Hagel was a part of a rebuild, and if he's being moved, then what is a player for the rebuild? So, but Tampa kind of rocked the socks off. I mean,
No. I don't. I actually think that you guys.
I think Kane's focused. Yeah, I think it's tough, and I think Taves might be gone and after his contract's up. But overall, I think Kane stays. I think he wants his legacy. I think he wants to go down as number 1 and everything. I think he has 3 cups, and he's not necessarily focused on that legacy aspect, but he's focused on the aspect of just trying to finish at the top of their franchise and everything, and go down as the greatest Blackhawk of all time. To be honest,
fair. I don't disagree with anything you said. There you go, Connor. You can say what you're going to say. I wanted to ask that since I got on here.
No, I wanted you to, and I want to go around the panel one last time here. We're kind of coming down to the end of the official stream, and then we'll take to social media probably for the rest of it. So go around, first Clifton, then Garth and Jake. Give me one last takeaway so far from this trade deadline that you're happy about, curious about, sad about. Final thoughts.
So I'll wrap up the Blackhawks real quick. I was happy with the Hagel trade. I was happy we moved Fleury. The only thing I wasn't happy about is that a Calvin DeHaan didn't get moved, and that a Dominic Kubalik wasn't moved. And I also saw a comment afterwards, and it could be out of context. I'm seeing it on Twitter, but Kyle Davidson's exact quote when he was asked about not moving a Calvin DeHaan was, if the value was not met, then the value of the player – if the value is not met, then you value the player more than anyone else. So we're happy the player that are here. We value them more than other teams around the league. So we're happy they're still with the Blackhawks. I'm sorry if you didn't trade Calvin DeHaan because you weren't willing to drop from a 4th to a 5th or whatever. He's not going to be here next year. That's a little annoying. Otherwise, I thought everything else you did was great. But if you're telling me you didn't want to trade a Calvin DeHaan because you didn't want to drop from a 2nd-round pick or whatever, it's a little disappointing. Otherwise, I liked everything.
Garth?
I was a little bit underwhelmed today. I think there was a bunch of big names on the board in the beginning, especially Vancouver's side of the Garlands and the Bessers. There was a lot of talk in that sense. Even like Pavel Zacha, not a huge name, but like something. So I thought there could have been more in that sense, but I think the true buyers got what they wanted out of this and are like Colorado, Florida, Calgary, and they have separated themselves from the rest. I think the Rangers caught up a little bit to, shorten that gap a little bit. But yeah, I think we know who the top teams are right now.
Fair. Jake, anything else before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I mean, from a Bruins standpoint, you got a foundational piece for your defense for the next. I think he'll be a foundational piece for probably 6 of these 8-year deal. It's a good signing for now and for the future with the 6.5 AAV. Today was super underwhelming, kind of as Garth said. There was a lot of names. The Bruins, I guess, were on the opposite side of it, but they were involved in a lot of things, and they didn't get the deal done. They didn't get any of the deals done. But at the same time, the Bruins have played good over the last 10 to 15 games. So just roll on forward, and Jake DeBrusk is still a Bruin.
Well, final question. Who is your now Stanley Cup favorite pick? Now let's go in the reverse. Jake, Garth, and then Clifton.
My Stanley Cup favorite is still the Colorado Avalanche. I think they're just that much better. Heard Manson today talking about playing with Cale Makar, and just he's like, I have to figure out when I'm going to say, hey, that was a nice play. He's like, because I'm just saying it to him nonstop, 24/7. He's like, so I have to stop saying it to him all the time. He's like, so I'm trying to figure out like, hey, that was a nice play. Hey man, that was a great play, because they're so good. Their whole team's so good. So it's them for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the similar spot, Colorado. I'm going to throw a bone to Tampa though too. They have not given me any reason not to believe in them. I'm going to go even to that Hagel deal because like I know everyone's calling it a huge overpayment. I really don't think it's that big of an overpayment. Because you also look at their cap structure for the next couple of years, and you have a guy like Andre Palat who comes off the book this summer. Hagel can just fill right in there for a lot cheaper, and then they can look at because you have to factor in the Braden Point extension. I'm pretty sure Cirelli's going to need the deal soon, so it helps them have some maneuverability this summer. So I do like what Tampa Bay did at this deadline, and I still think they have a lot of weapons and could go pretty far.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that a little bit. My 2 teams I'd be looking at is the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. I do lean more towards the Lightning. I think they've been there, done that, bought that T-shirt twice, and they're going to three-peat. Hagel's great, going to perform. And to add to that, I think it's not that much of an overpayment because I think they lose Plot and Killhorn in the offseason. But yeah, and then obviously I'm just going to throw in the Minnesota Wild. They're going to make the Western Conference Finals, of course.
I like it. He's rooting for an extra draft pick. I do like it. So with that, I think that about wraps up our main trade deadline coverage. The trade call queue is kind of slow here and nothing's been trickling out. So I expect we're probably waiting for one deal to get done. Garth, looks like you have one final thing. What's up?
There was something about Steve Eisman's media availability was originally scheduled for 4:30. It got pushed back to 5, and now it's pushed back to 5:30. So yeah, I don't know if we want to read into that.
Not done.
So
if we want to read into that or not, I don't know. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I mean that along with the reports of 30 plus trades still in the hopper, waiting for a trade call. Looks like we're going to have a pretty busy evening as the NHL schedule gets started. But with that, we will officially end the show. I do want to thank all of you guys who have come on today and the special guests, and of course, Clifton and Garth for sticking it out with me the whole time. producer Ray behind the scenes. I know you're a hermit, but we all love you. Everybody in Inside the Rink loves you. And of course, the last thing, I will put this out on our social media later, but please do go ahead and check out our mobile application on any app store, on any phone. Get with it. I'll throw up some QR codes later. Thank you, everybody, for participating and jumping in with us, and we will be back soon.